Hello friends, welcome to Universe of Naruto X. If you love Naruto what if stories and anime explanations, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Now let's begin today's story. Unlike her father, Sakura thought as she looked at Ino. Na looked down at Sakura as he turned off his Renegon and with 2 gold coins in his hand, made a fist around it and placed his other hand over it. Hayate looked between both girls, raising his hand as Naruto closed his eyes and whispered a prayer. Artemis felt divine energy appear from Naruto's hand as she looked over and heard him whisper the prayer before looking over to Sakura to see her adjust her stance. Who did you pray to? Artemis asked Naruto in his mind once Naruto opened his eyes and opened his fist to show that the olden coins were go. Lady Tish so that Sakura can have good luck in this match and Lady Athena so that Sakura can make a good strategy. Naruto told her as Artemis. Hayate brought his hand down and called out, begin. As he said that, Sakura pulled out pellets from her pouch and threw them onto the ground. And once they hit the ground, they burst into pink smoke. The smoke covered both Kunoi and Ino looked around trying to find Sakura before she ran to where Sakura was. But Sakura was no longer there. Naruto looked down into the smoke and followed something. Thou it, while Artemis did the same thing and looked at the same spot as Na, you taught her how to move silently. Artemis said as Na nodded but said nothing. Kakashi looked amazed that his Kunoichi student was going through this as he could not find her. And to hear that Naruto had taught her this. Sakura moved through the smoke with her hair bending into the smoke as if she could see where Ino was, and with her fist back, she shot it forward into the Yamanaka's chest, sending Ino out of the smoke. Ino flew out of the smoke, skidding across the floor as she clutched her stomach. When did she get so strong? She asked herself in thought. Ino moved her feet to be ready to move as the smoke started to clear. But more smoke bombs flew out of the smoke and burst, allowing more smoke to form. Where did she? Ino started to say, but was soon covered by the smoke. Shikamaru looked at the battle zone in shock at how the fight was going as Naruto watched silently while Artemis turned to Kakashi. What have you taught her, Kakashi? She asked him. Kakashi turned to the moon goddess with an eye smile. Oh. Nothing much, he told her. That does not answer the question, Artemis said as she turned fully to Kakashi. All you taught my son that was any use to a ninja was the key. No Bori no Shujio. So, what have you taught her? She asked Kakashi once more, who looked at her in shock. Who told you that? Kakashi asked her with sweat on the back of his neck as he felt disapproving eyes from both the Hokage and his Fae. Lo Konohan. But it was not just the Konohan, but the Jonin from the other villages. Naruto did, and when I secretly checked his mind and found that he was telling the truth, I wondered what you taught your team's Kunoichi, Artemis said. Kakashi got ready to answer, but Naruto beat him to the punch. The same as me, he said to his mother, but did not look to see the look on Kakashi's face or the Artemis narrowed eyes aimed at Kakashi. Now why? Kakashi said before Artemis cut him off. Minato would be disappointed with you, she told him as Kakashi's visible eye shot wide. I was unable to raise Naruto because of a law my bastard of a father had made. But you did nothing to aid your sensei's son. Artemis told Kakashi as the man felt that he was being stabbed. Asuma scoffed as the moon goddess turned to him. H's Anchior. He told the goddess as she raised a brow at him. He means that all Kakashi cares for is the Uchiha clan and would do anything for an Uchiha. Kurana said as Kakashi glared at both of them, but they were not affected by the glare. Before Kakashi could speak again, Ino was sent out of the smoke again, but this time her feet were not touching the flue. And the smoke was dissipating again. She only has 3 smoke bombs left, Na muttered. 3 smoke bombs flew out once more, and pink smoke covered the area once more, and now she has none, Na said with crossed fingers. Ino landed on her back as she got up and looked around before pulling out a wani and throwing it into the smoke. She waited and she looked into the smoke waiting for it to dissipate, and when it did Sakura was not there as Ino looked around. People with dojutsu activated them or in Kakashi's case pulled up his hit and they saw that Sakura was standing in front of Ino. Where is she? Shikamaru asked before a portion of dust was kicked up as Ino soon punched them in the cheek. What jutsu is she using? Artemis asked her son as she saw Naruto gripping the railing. The Mujin Misai. As the smoke bombs I made for her, a special blend of liquids and one comes in contact with the air. It turns to smoke, Naruto said as Artemis looked amazed by her son. But she cannot hold the jutsu for long, Naruto said as he looked at Ino being pummeled by the invisible Sakura. How long can she use it? Artemis asked her son. Naruto looked over to his mother. From what we timed, she can use this jutsu for 2 minutes. Naruto told her as Artemis nodded. Sakura kept punching and kicking Ino around the arena floor while Ino tried to defend Aegis, the invisible opponent. She is hitting harder than normal. What the is happening? Ino screamed in her head. Before Ino could punch where she thought Sakura was, she felt something hit the side of her chest and it took her off her feet and she felt a crack in her ribs before she was sent into the center of the area. Shikamaru and Choji looked shocked by the battle happening. How is Ino losing? Choji asked Shikamaru, who did not know. I mean, she's part of the Yamanaka clan show. How is she losing? He asked, but he did not get an answer. Being a part of a clan does not mean that you can win every battle, Artemis said as both boys looked over to her. When I was training my 3 students, Yuga was the best out of them and was the one that had beaten all others that she fought and that meant those from clans, she explained to the boy. Asuma nodded as both his students as they looked at him. She's right. I fought her and I was beaten black and blue and was lucky that I came out of that fight with my arm on my body. He told his students as Artemis raised a brow at him. Come on. She was trying to cut off my right arm. Asuma told her as Artemis rolled her eyes at him. My old teammate was not trying to cut your arm off. Kurina said. Asuma looked over at her. Sensei taught all 3 of us how to use a sword. And she was not going to cut your arm off. She was going to dislocate your shoulder as she was using the back of her sword. Kurani said, rolling her eyes as Asuma looked shocked. Naruto not listening to them. He kept an eye on the battle as he followed the invisible Sakura with his dojutsu and he saw that the flow of chakra was slowly fading. She's about to become visible. Na muttered as Artemis looked at him before she looked down to see that he was right. Why? It's too early for her, Na muttered as he narrowed his eyes. He saw a chakra coils around Sakura's right fist and start to resemble an animal's head. Takasaki-kun, Sakura called out as the chakra turned into a tiger's head and shot out of her fist at Ino as a beam. Ino's eyes shot wide as the beam hit her square in the chest as she saw a new side of Sakura that she never saw before. Ino slammed into the wall behind her as she lost consciousness and Sakura fell to her knees. Hayate walked over to Ino but kept his eyes on Sakura before he knelt down to check on the down blonde. And after checking to see if she was breathing, he stood up. Winner of the 5th match is Sakura Haruno. Hayate called out as Sakura let out a sigh and started to fall back as she was out of energy. But before she could fall, she felt something appear behind her. She looked behind her to see Na with a loving smile as he looked at her. You did good, Naruto told her as he gently lifted her up as medics walked over to Ino. But next time when you need to finish a fight, don't use something as taxing as Ruokan. Naruto told her as he teleported back up to the observation area. I know, and it's called Takasaki-kun, Sakura muttered to him as Naruto placed her down gently on the ground. I thought that only a tiger could stand up to a dragon, Sakura told him as she saw Naruto's eyes fill with joy. Asuma soon appeared back with his team like Naruto did, but he had Ino in his hands as he placed her gently against the wall. Where did you look that Sakura? Shikamaru asked Sakura, who looked over at him. For the 2 days before today, Naruto aided me in my training by showing me how to fight. But when he was training with his clones, I saw him using a technique that I made a version of. Sakura told him as she held right arm as it was shaking slightly. It seems that I was not ready to use it. She muttered as Artemis looked Sakura over. You need to train your strength more before you can use that. She told the girl who looked up. You just used chakra enhanced strength, don't you? She asked. Sakura nodded as Artemis sighed. What? Sakura asked her. Na uses another fighting style called Geki Juken to form a base for him to use his Marukan. Artemis told her as Sakura's eyes shot open. And with him using the dragon aspect of Geki Juken to make Marukan. Artemis said as Sakura hung her head. It hurt my body as I was going against the dragon aspect. Sakura said as Artemis and Na nodded as Naruto rubbed circles into her back. Naruto, can you? Sakura started off as she turned to Na. Yay. I will, Na said as Kakashi scowled at his students. Why don't you ask me? He asked Sakura, who looked up at the one-eyed man with a raised brow. Why would I ask you when you only teach Sasuke? Sakura said as she looked at him. Kakashi blinked. I mean Sasaki has learned how to use both fire release and you started teaching him how to use lighting release. Sakura said as Naruto nodded. My summons taught me how to use one jutsu of each of the basic elements. And I taught Sakura how to use both of hers. Naruto said as he looked at Kakashi from the corner of his eye as the next two people walked down. The first was Yoroi's final teammate, Sumi Tsurugi. Mumi's appearance was greatly concealed by the mask he wore around his mouth that hung around his neck. ND hit, which he wore like a bandana. And he also wore what team's clothing that consisted of a high-collared sleeveless purple shirt with a short-sleeved white one underneath, a simple obi around his waist, purple pants, blue sandals, and purple fingerless gloves along with a pair of round-framed G lasses. The other person was Fu's other teammate, Yoro. He has short spiky black hair and small black eyes with his outfit consisting of a dark violet vest with 2 scrolls attached to it, a light violet turtleneck and dark green colored pants. And he wears a blue hit I-88. But Na and Sakura did not care about the match as they wanted to tear Kakashi a new one. And with the foreign ninja here, it added to the man's humiliation. Mom taught me most of everything that I know. Naruto started off the verbal attacks. The rest was taught to me by the dragons. But you have only taught me and Sakura how to work as a team with only me and Sakura working as a team while your favorite student was doing none of the sorts. He added as Sakura nodded. And like always, you would play a blind eye. And when we were in Wave, you taught us the key Nuragio. Not when we just came out of the academy like you were supposed to. Sakura said as Kakashi turned to her as he felt the eyes of the Hokage drilling into him along with Guy, Asuma and Kurenai's as well. And with had happened during the exam in the forest and Sakura realizing that she needed training, she came to me so that I could help her and I did. And even though I did not mind that everyone here knows that she should go to you. Naruto said as Sakura nodded while Kakashi looked between his students. And let's not forget that Sasuke does not care for me or Sakura as he wants only to kill someone and would do anything to do just that. He added while Kakashi had nothing to say. Here isn't hearing this and to say he was disappointed was an understatement. Kakashi, meet me in my office when these matches are over, he told the man as Kakashi looked over and nodded. And I was right, Minato really would be disappointed with you, Artemis said as Kakashi looked over to her and could see pure hate being aimed at him from the goddess. Even Ren and Obito would be disappointed with you as you said when you found out that Minato and I were going to have a child. You said that you would help them and teach them what they needed to know. Artemis added as Kakashi flinched at the names of his dead teammates. And from what most people did not see was that one of the Kyonin flinched at the name Ren. Kakashi had nothing to say as everyone turned back to the match to see that Hayate was calling the match a draw. Hayate looked at everyone as they all looked confused. Sumi was using Nan no Kaiso to make Yoro pass out from lack of air while Yoro was using lighting release to do the same. He told everyone as medics came and carried the two boys off the field. As the names started to shuffle once more, Kakashi looked at Naruto and Sakura as they talked about going out for food when the prelims were over. His mind was going over what both of them had said along with what Artemis had said. But for some reason, something was stopping his mind from fixing the mistakes. A picture formed in his mind of a 4-point pinwheel spinning as he blinked and shook his head before the image vanished as the next Wo names were picked. Karen Azuaki versus Shikamaru Nara. All of the Konohan eyes shot to the board with Artemis and Naruto being the most surprised as Naruto pulled out his clan scroll and opened it before he found the name and showed his mother. Karen has crimson eyes, fair skin, and the characteristic red hair of the Uzumaki clan, which she wears in an unusual hairstyle with her hair cut short and spiky on the right side, while longer and straight on the left side, and she wears narrow brown glasses, which have a serrated blade hidden in hem. And her outfit consists of a mesh shirt and stockings, a purple skirt, a light brown short-sleeved jacket with an orange stripe going across the chest, and black sandals and a kusuja hit on her forehead. Shikamaru looked over to the girl he was fighting before he looked at Na. Is she? He asked her. She is my cousin on my mother's side. Na said as Sakura looked at him in question. I'll say in a bit. Naruto told her as she nodded. Shikamaru narrowed his eyes at what Naruto told him, but nodded as he walked to the battle area. So, how is she? Sakura asked him as Naruto turned to her. Is she from your uncle or from when she was? Sakura asked as Na nodded at her. Mom was one of 3 children that were the heir of the Uzumaki clan. Naruto told her as Sakura nodded along with him. Mom had a younger brother, Nagato, and a younger sister, Rais. He added as Artemis nodded with her son. Kurani turned to Artemis. I didn't know you had siblings, sensei. She asked the goddess. Before I was in my shell, I had only younger twin brother Apollo. And when my bastard of a father put me in my shell, I had 2 younger siblings, Artemis said as she gained a gentle smile. My little brother was such a baby and would always stick to Mom or me so that he could get away from the evil man who was his teacher. Artemis said as Naruto smiled. What about your sister? Sakura asked as Artemis's face turned dark. The best way to put it, Nagato was the angle that always did as he was told and was sweet and a little wimpy. Artemis said as they nodded. Not getting where she was going. Rais was a devil that was caused chaos and would once a week blow up a building just for the hell of it. Artemis growled as Naruto looked amazed. Shikamaru, who was taking his time getting down, hearing this, started praying that Karen was the daughter of Nagato. But his prayers were not answered by what Artemis said next. While her eyes are not the same as Rias's purple from our mother, she looks like a little ruse, the goddess told Sakura as Shikamaru reached the middle of the area. Karen met him in the middle with Hayate standing in the middle of him. But if you looked closely, you could see that he wanted to jump away, and those with sharp ears heard him say, not another Uzumaki. Naruto raised a brow at what he said as he saw Artemis crack a grin and chuckled at what Hayate said. Hayate raised his hand as he looked between them before he brought his cry of begin. Kane pulled out a kanai with a paper tag that was attached to it before she threw it at Shikamaru. Shikamaru jumped back as the kanai landed in a line in front of him before they exploded, making a large cloud of smoke. And Shikamaru did the smart thing and waited. Now, of all the things that he expected to come out of the smoke, a golem of stone was not one of them. Shikamaru ducked under the fist that the golem sent his way as he looked it over with narrow eyes. While up on the observation deck, Naruto was looking down at the fight with narrowed eyes. What is her plan? Na muttered as he looked into the smoke and tried to see what she was doing. If she anything like Rais, she going to use more explosions or other destructive things, Artemis said with a twitching eye. Sakura looked into the smoke as she looked where Naruto was looking, but could not find anything. How are you seeing her? Sakura asked him. I'm not really seeing her. Well, not really, Naruto said as he looked over to Sakura, who looked confused. I'm using mantra's presence sensing to see thou the smoke and find her aura. Naruto explained as Sakura still looked confused. You see, Naruto-san is using Haki, and that is allowing him to use extranet abilities. And the one he is using is called Mandra, or better known as Keibankoku Haki, Guy told Sakura as she looked to the older-looking Lee as the man's 3 students were doing the same. And with him using that type of Haki, he can see the aura of a person that is hidden in something. Guy explained as Sakura gained a look of understanding. On the other hand, Lee looked amazed. Can anyone learn this? He asked his sensei. Guy shook his head. Yes and no. Haki has 3 parts to it. Guy told his student. And when Naruto said that he has all 3, that means he is one in several million people born with this ability. Guy said as Haswin nodded while Neji looked shocked. He speaks the truth as I only know a few men that had this ability that Guy speaks of. Hai said as everyone apart for Shikamaru who was jumping from the golem and Karen who was looking at Shikamaru with narrowed eyes. From Konoha there were both Hashiyama Senju and the second was Manado Namikaze. Herwan said shocked while everyone was amazed by that. What about from the other villages? Sakura asked as people from the other villages nodded. Well, from Suna, I think that Maiwa the third K's cage has this type of Haki and the current Mazukage Murumi has this Haki as well. Hai said as the Suna and Kiri ninja looked amazed by what he was saying. Both the current and third Raikage as well and Onoki the such Kage has the Househoku Haki. The Hokage finished as Neji was having a mini breakdown. Do you not have this ability Hokage-sama? Kakashi asked as he looked shocked that Sasaki did not have it. But that was nothing new. But he shook his head. No. I only have Keibankoku Haki and the ability we were talking about is hereditary. And from what Hashiyama-sensei told me, he got his Househoku Haki from his mother. Hai said as Nei looked over to Naruto. Then what told Sakura started making its way down Neji's head. Konoha Mountain, the Hokage Rock. And he said, count to 4. That means that his father is, Neji said as he looked at Naruto. And when his mind took Naruto's whiskers away from his face, he looked like a younger man Namikaze. Not aware that Neji's world was crumbling around him, Shikamaru started to use his plan. He knelt down at the golem, turned to him, and formed the rat seal as his shadow shot out and attacked the golem. Shadow imitation complete, Shikamaru said as he rose to his feet and moved his body to face the wall. The golem followed his movements and Shikamaru and the golem clapped their hands. And while Shikamaru's clap did nothing, the golem on the other hand blew away all the smoke that the Kani was making as Naruto took a good look at the Kanai and saw that the tag that was connected to it was not explosive. Tags. Smoke tags, Na said as everyone looked at him. That is what Karen is using. Smoke tags that allow for a ninja to work without being seen or having to go face to face as they can work in the background silently. He said as Sakura looked amazed before looking at Naruto with puppy dog eyes. Sakura, no. I know that you want to have something that can help you when you are going medical enjutsu. But you must do them for yourself, Naruto said, not looking at her as he thought. No. I will not look. He would not look. He would stay strong. He would not look. He saw pink in his periphery. He turned. He looked. He broke. Fine. I'll make them for you, Na said as he hung his head in defeat. Shoji walked over and patted Naruto's back as Sakura kissed his cheek. And Artemis laughed. Oh. You are too much like me, Databane. She told her son as Naruto looked over. When your father wanted help with Fu and Jutsu, he would be just like your girlfriend here. Artemis said as Sakura looked shocked but red in the face. Karen looked over to her golem and released it after seeing that it was no longer under her control. So, do you think you can do that again? She asked Shikamaru, who raised a brow at her. Did you not that the Uzumaki clan have chakra reserves more than a kage when they reached 13? Karen told Shikamaru, whose eyes shot wide as he glanced at Naruto, who nodded. Your clan sounds troublesome, Shikamaru said with a sigh as Karen narrowed her eyes. Look, I don't want to fight a girl as I don't think that it's right, Shikamaru said as he heard growling from above him. And he dare not look as it was from both the goddess and her demigod son. While the other woman was not any better as Sakura pulled out a kanai and started to engrave it, Kurina. I was planning to use a genjutsu on him. Tenten thought that he would make a good training dummy. Enko was planning to have her snakes play with him and what was only the Konohakunoiki as the others were planning other ungodly things for him. As she was pure, Hinata's thoughts were nothing like them. And why is that? Karen asked him. A dark look in her eyes and that was when Shikamaru knew he up. But he could not stop his mouth. All kuniki are weaker than the shinobi. He told her as his eyes shot wide as he felt the killing intent from the females around him along with Na. I'll turn him into a jack, Artemis said before seeing a dark smile form on Naruto's face. Oh. I have a better idea, Naruto said as most of the people read Kakashi, Asuma and Kurini's final stew. Den stepped away from him when they saw the smile. I'll turn him into a woman and you curse him, Naruto said as Artemis gained an equally dark smile on her face. I like your plan, she said as Asuma looked shocked before bowing his head along with the other two men that stepped away. And all three of them said as one, better him than me. Shikamaru felt a chill go down his spine as he looked over to his sensei to see that man bowing his head and the dark look on the faces of the women. He then turned to Karen, whose face looked shadowed by her hair, and her crimson eyes glowed eerily as Shikamaru prepared for her attack. And he was bricking it. Karen shot at Shikamaru with lightning speed as the shadow user dodged slashes from the Kunoiki Kuni before he formed the rat seal once more. As his shadow shot forward once more and connected to Karen this time as she stopped in place. Shikamaru seeing that he had caught her side shadow imitation completes he said once more before both Karen and Shikamaru started to walk over to the other side of the room and with how Shikamaru had them placed Karen was just in front of the wall while a few steps away. What are you going to do you monkey? Karen growled at him. 1. I'm a Na, Shikamaru said as he raised his head back as Karen did the same. And 2. I'm going to do this. He told her as he brought his head forward fast and hard. And with Karen copying everything he was doing, she headbutted the wall hard and knocked herself out when her head met the wall. Hayat walked over to Karen and checked on her before calling out, Winder Shikamaru. Nah, he called out as Shikamaru nodded and started returning up. Shikamaru made his way up the sights as Naruto looked over to him. And so he took a deep breath and felt for the magic that came from his mother's godly blood that flowed within him while keeping his target in his sight. He called on the feelings he used when changing his student, follower, and little brother in all but blood from male to female. And there he felt a tug in his fingers as if pulling an arrow across a bow. With the index, middle, and ring fingers of his right hand curled, he felt the magic form. And he took aim at Shikamaru, who was walking over to his team. And when he was close, Naruto's 3 gingers shot out as if they had just shot an arrow, and the magic flew and made its way into the boy. Shikamaru felt something happened to him as he felt a tingling sensation wash over him as he looked at his hand as saw changes starting to happen. But we can get back to him after a while. And Shikamaru felt funny as the next 2 names. Tekwa of Nadashiko Village vs Conqueror of Suna. Conqueror wore a Bunraku puppeteer's costume, a black baggy full-body suit with a red and yellow circle on the front. He also wore a black hood covering his head completely with cat-like ears and his hit on his forehead. Conqueror's face was covered in purple war paint makeup, and he had 4 triangles with 1 on each cheek, 1 on his forehead and the last on his chin. 2 jagged lines that come down from his forehead to the bridge of his nose. He also had it around his eyes and mouth. T, on the other hand, had an imposing figure, easily towering over Conquo and most of the others that were in the exam. She had a slender physique with a very angular face framed by her short brown hair along with a dark shade of red lipstick. She wears a short backless red full bodysuit over mesh armor, a pair of arm-length gloves, a light orange sash, and a long blue-green apron open in the front, and wears bandages on her wrists covering all of her right left as well as her left thigh and leg. And she carries an extremely long and thin katana strapped to her back. As they both met Hayat in the middle and then started the match, Tequila looked over at Konyuro with a raised brow. Are you by chance a puppet user? She asked, catching the boy off guard as Conqueror nodded. I see that I must concede this match as I do not believe I would win this fight at my current level. Aegis a puppet user, she said to Hayat, who looked shocked before he nodded and declared Conqueror the winner. Smart, Artemis said as everyone looked at her as the 2 genin walked back to their respective teams. Not many close-range fighters would attack a puppet user, she said as most of the jonin nodded. Puppet user, Na asked his mother as she looked at him. The best way to put it is you with Shira but not alive and made of wood. Artemis said to her son as Naruto's eyes shot wide. Yep, I fought a few and they were no joke, she told her son, who nodded. Before long, the next 2 names were picked as Shikamo's body changed. His figure started to become more like Enos, and his hair became softer along with his skin. His mesh shirt gained 2 mounds over his chest and the 2 names that were picked were Tenten of Konoha via Sakatsuki of Iowa. Both people walked down as Asuma and Choji looked at Shikamaru with wide eyes as they saw him become a her. They looked over to see a smiling Na as they put 2 of 2 together. Na, you do this? Choji asked him as Shikamaru looked over to Na, who nodded. Why? He asked him why our dear friend Shikamaru decided that he had to say that all kunoichi are weak and so I decided that he should feel that weakness. Naruto said with a smile that did not reach his eyes as Choji nodded. Artemis walked over to the boy-turned-girl and whispered in his her ear, and as a goddess of maiden girls and I have a group of female hunters. I decided that you will not turn back to make until you know what power a woman really has. She whispered her his as her eyes glowed as Shikamaru nodded. Tendon went down to the bottom, not before she unsealed a katana and handed both her scrolls to Lee, who was shocked. It was where she met Akatsuki, who was also standing and walking down. Akatsuki is a large and imposing teen with dark eyes and black hair that spikes out at the back from underneath his bandana-styled hishiate. He wears the red Iwager uniform, which has both its sleeves and accentuates it with a yellow scarf, which he wraps around his neck. He also has large cheeks and a plump nose which give him an overall look of constant joviality. Na looked over to Lee as the boy looked at the scrolls in his hands. Has she learned a style? Na asked him as Lee looked over and nodded. When she reached the tower only a few hours after you, she hit the library to find a Kenjutsu style and found the Kokuho. Lee said as Artemis and Naruto looked at him then looked down at Tenten. What is it? He asked them. Tenten may have found her perfect style, Naruto said as Lee's eyes shot wide. But she must start with the sun and go from there. Na said as Artemis nodded as Lee looked in with a question on his face. What do you mean? He asked Naruto, who looked at the boy. I know Kokuho myself, But I only know the basics, Naruto told Lee, who nodded. But when you learn Koku Ho, you always start with H no Koku, Naruto said as Artemis nodded. I was able to master both Mizu no Koku and Suki no Koku, Artemis said as Kurani's eyes shot wide. But I could not even try to use the other 10 styles as it would not match my style of fighting, the moon goddess explained to her former student. So Lee, what else do you know? Guy asked his student who looked at him. Tenten also wants to make her own style and change Naran once more. Lee said as Guy nodded. And I would like to spar against Naruto as well, he admitted as Naruto looked over to Lee with a raised brow. Really? Na asked him as Lee nodded. Then if we do not fight in this exam, I accept your challenge, he said to Lee, who smiled widely. Both of them then turned to the match as both Tenteb and Akatsuki were in the middle. Hayate looked between them as Akatsuki smiled at Tenten. I hope we have a nice match, he told her as Tenten nodded with a smile before she looked at Na. Naruto looked at her and nodded. Tenten turned back to her opponent with her katana ready as Naruto looked at Tenten with his Keibankoku Haki too. Have a look at her and saw that her aura was taking the form of a sun begin. Hayate called out as Akatsuki went thou 4 hand seals and then a wall of earth from out of the ground in front of him and blocked Tenten from him. But she did not care because as soon as Hayate called begin, Tenten closed her eyes and took hold of her sword. She took a breath in and then breathed out. Air in, air out, air in, hot air out, air in, white smoke out, air in, steam out. Akatsuki then ran through the wall with segments of the wall over him as Tenten raised her sword as flames gathered on the outside of it. She then moved to the side as Akatsuki barred past her, and she did an overhead arching slash with a blazing sword. The flaming blade moved through the stone that covered Akatsuki and started to dry and crack as the blade cut through. Sensei, isn't that the sun's kunoiki? Asked the man beside her. She has teal eyes and sandy blonde hair, which is gathered into 4 consecutive pigtails. Her outfit consisted of a long-sleeved purple blouse under a gray top, a dark blue skirt, and a longer sash arranged in a bow. In addition to incorporating fishnet worn over her legs, specifically on her right calf and her left thigh, she also wore her black hide around her neck and on her back was a large metal folding fan. The man she was talking to was Suna Jonan, whom Hirozen spoke to. He's a very tall man with 2 distinctive red markings on the right side of his face, the only visible part of his head, with the rest being covered by his turban-like headgear and by a sheet hanging from it on the left side of his face. And he dons the standard attire of a Sunyuna nin complete with a hit and flak jacket. Yes, Tamari, that is short release, but that girl is not using it like Pakura does. He told her as the now named Tamari looked confused. You see, Akashi left something out when she was explaining that Kenjutsu style. He told her, what do you mean, sensei? Konyuro asked him as the youngest of the team looked over as well. The Koku Ho calls on the elements so the stickers gain more power. He told them as 2 of his students nodded. And so with H no Koku being that of the sun and thus calls on short release, he added as they nodded. So now that Ian Nin's Rokumura is getting too brittle, Tamari said as she saw the rock armor fall from Akatsuki. Tenten's body seemed to relax as Naruto saw the sun turn to a calm sea. Akatsuki turned around in time to see that Tenten had shifted her stance and crossed her arms while holding her sword before going for a concentrated horizontal slash that generated water that both cut through the front part of his armor and soaked the rock. That was the first form of Mizu no Koku, Artemis said as she looked over Tenten before taking in parts of her before turning to Guy. You good as she when it comes to weapons? The goddess asked him as Guy looked shocked. He's shocked by the question asked. Why? Because if I'm right, Tenten may be like Naruto and as my half-niece, Artemis said as his ruin's eyes shot wide as he seemingly teleported over to Artemis before forming a seal so that only the Konohan ninja could hear the conversation. So her mother is like you, a goddess? His asked as those that did not know looked either confused or shocked. Artemis nodded at him. Yes, and by looking at Tenten, it is either one of the 2 twins of war, Artemis said as Guy looked confused. What do you mean? He asked before his eyes shot wide and he sank to his knees. I mean, what do you mean Kasha-sama? Guy asked. Naruto's eyes gained a little bit of math in him as the people looked shocked. Except for Sakura and Karina, Mom is the goddess of the hunt, the moon, animals, forests, archery, childbirth, maiden girls, radiance, and the wild, and is one of the 3 virgin goddesses of the Greek pantheon. He told them as they looked confused. And my mother's name is either Artemis or Diana, Naruto said before Sakura returned to him. What do you mean? She asked him. Ages ago, a civilization called Rome came about, and so they adopted the Greek gods, but they gained a new personality and some new domains. Na explained. Artemis' eyes became hard as she looked at her son. Na, she said as her voice was colder. Na turned to her. Yes, Mom, he asked her. Why must you tell them that I adjust so that I must shift over? Diana asked as everyone looked amazed. Yes, I am Diana, the other side of Artemis, and the domain that was added was woodlands, she said as she turned back to Artemis as her eyes lost the hardness. His looked amazed before he shook his head. You said something about the twins of war, he asked Artemis, who looked at him. Who does she live with? Artemis asked as Nay and Lee looked at each other before returning to Artemis. She lives with her father, Lee said as she nodded. Then it's possibly my half-sister Enyo or her Roman counterpart is Bellona. Artemis said as a cough was heard next to Artemis. Everyone turned to see another woman standing next to Artemis. She had short black hair in a pixie cut with blue highlights, pure spirit white eyes of the dam that died in The war and a crazy sinister smile. Her body is military-like with a lean figure and strong biceps. And she was dressed in a purple cropped leather jacket for women with silver fur around the neck and a black crop top with the symbol of anarchy on it, black gloves over her hands, a shot purple and black skirt along with fishnets and biker boots, and at her side was a baseball bat. Na saw her and his eyes shot wide and he sank to the floor on his knee. Lady Enyo, Naruto said as the other Konohan ninja did the same. But they also saw something on Naruto's face that shocked them. Fear. Enyo looked over at the Konoha ninja and waved her hand. You may raise mortals, she told them as they all stood up. And you guess right, Tenten is my daughter, Enyo said as she looked over the match as Tenten shifted stances. Once more, Artemis looked at Enyo with a raised brow. Are you going to claim her? She asked the war goddess. Enyo looked over to Na and looked at him with narrowed eyes before turning to Artemis. I'll tell you after you tell me why you have not claimed your son. Enyo asked her. Na looked at her confused before he rolled up his sleeve to show his arm. Lady Enyo, Naro said as the war goddess turned to him and saw his arm. My mother is both Artemis and Diana, and so to keep me safe from my grandfather, Diana claimed me and Mom told me shall claim me a camp half-blood. Naruto told her as Enyo looked at Artemis for confirmation. And with Artemis nodding, Enyo laughed and slapped Naruto on the back a few times. Haha. Oh. I like you, kid. Enyo said to Naruto as the demigod felt his back click from hard she slapped his back. And if I did claim her as my daughter, Ares will be it to her. Enyo told Artemis, who sighed and nodded. Guy looking confused turned to her. What do you mean, Enyos-sama? He asked the war goddess. My twin brother is it to both mine and his own daughters. And before he claims his, they must prove that they deserve to be a daughter of Ares. Enyo said as she rolled her eyes. But when I have a daughter and I claim them, he desired to personally give them a quest to prove that they can be his niece, she said before scoffing as she looked down at the field in time to see Tenten sheathing her katana, then redraws it and performs a singular horizontal slash F following a crescent shape, creating numerous chaotic crescent blades along its path before sheathing it once more. This here is why I'm happy. Why I have Apollo as my twin. Artemis muttered as Enyo glared at her. But you did not answer my question, the moon goddess asked the war goddess. Enyo lost the savage smile as she looked down at her daughter as the crescent wave that Tenten sent out hit Akatsuki and got rid of his armor before he formed a few seals and a stone golem, one like what Karen called out. Formed out of the ground and loomed over Tenten. Yes, I will claim her. But I ask you one thing, son of Artemis, Ino said before turning to Na, who nodded. Join her on her quest and make sure that she comes back alive. She asked as Na looked at her and saw that in her glowing golden eyes was the care that his mother held for him, but it was for Tenten. Tenten raised her katana above her head as she recalled the attack that Na used against her with the wolf. But she could not call on a wolf. No, she called on something just as powerful. Yabanurashi Bofu Tenten called out and she brought her sword down and as a bait of chakra shot out of her katana and traveled across the ground and cut thou the golem. The chakra wave moved past Akatsuki and looked at Tenten with wide eyes before raising his hands. "I surrender," he called out. Hayate walked over as he looked up to the observation area to see Enyo looking down. He raised a hand. "Winner of this match is Tenten of Konoha," he called out as her team started clapping. "Well done, Tenten," Enyo said as Tenten heard her and looked up to see her mother. Tenten then blinked and Enyo was no longer there. Hai saw that Enyo had gone, nodded at Artemis and reappeared at his chair as both ninjas walked back to their respective teams. Katsuki got back to his team as they looked at him while two of them patted him on the back saying that he would do better next time. The last one bird him. Here are his teammates. The first was a very tall teen dressed heavily armored wearing red armor that covered his body and faces with only his light brown eyes. He was eyebrowless showing and his armor extended all the way to the bottom half of his face covering it up. And he wore a white cloth which also covered both sides of his face and the top of his head. Aside from his red armor, he also wore a red kasa over the white cloth which seemed to be composed of the same material as his armor. And he wore his Awaga Hit 8 on a black cloth and over his armor. The Iwa Genin wore a black GI with the sleeves seemingly torn off in black gloves and around his neck he wore what seems to be a bronzy cold ring around his neck. Also, the armor covering his arms, legs, and torso was plated. The next one was the John and sensei of the team who had red hair, a mustache, and a beard that tapered off to a point. He wore a large headpiece consisting of a three-pointed crown-like ridge bearing both his Iwaga Hit I-8, a ring, and a prominent black piece of armor running across his cheeks and the bridge of his nose. He wore a long-sleeved magenta kimono shirt and pants, a mesh armor shirt and fitted black suit underneath, and calf-length sandals. And around his waist, he wore a brown sash that held a brown armor like with a pouch in the front, a brown back plate on the back that was connected to the show with mesh armor and armored lapels falling to the sides. Then there was the kunoiki of the team who had short black hair and distinctly pink eyes which were accentuated by her eyelashes running upwards at the corners. She wears the standard attire of the Iwa Nin, consisting of a red uniform with her right sleeve missing and a lapel over her right leg, thigh, schnet tights and a skirt over them. She also wears regular shinobi sandals and a pair of gloves. "Really, Akatsuki? You lost her a tree hugger?" she asked him as Akatsuki as sensei shook his head with a small smile. "While I would not have said not, you did well with fighting someone that uses the kokuho," he told him as Akatsuki nodded. "I myself would not fare much better than you would have," he added as the Iwa kunoiki's eyes shot wide. "Really, Roshi sensei?" she asked him. "Yes, Kuretsuki, as when I fought both the Akashi and the Shiori and I still have the scars," Roshi told her as he showed his arm and her team saw a long scar going up his arm. "The Akashi did that?" Kuretsuki asked as she looked at the scar, but Roshi shook his head. "No. Her one was on my back. This one Shiori did and well as he was her father," Roshi said as both Kuretsuki and Akatsuki gulped. Roshi looked over to his armored student as he looked at the red-haired Suna ninja. "What is it, Han?" Roahi asked him. "The Ikeburi is slowly becoming unhinged with each passing moment that he is not fighting," Han said as Roshi looked over and winced as both Kuretsuki and Akatsuki looked over but could not see anything. "What do you mean?" Because Kuretsuki asked Han as Roshi and I are Genshiriki. "We can tell if one of our siblings is off the deep end," Han said as Kuretsuki widened, and even now Roshi and I are not liked in the village. We are not attacked like what Sunyuna does to him, Han told her. "What do you mean?" Akatsuki asked. "Suna goes out of its way to try and kill its Genshiriki," Roshi said as Kuretsuki and Akatsuki looked sickened with how their seal work, if worse than the Genshiriki, is practically insane. He added as Han nodded. "And our siblings have taken note as well," Han said as Kuretsuki and Akatsuki looked around. The first was two Kumo ninja. The first was one of three Kumokuniki, who had long, straight, blonde hair bound with Todd bandages and dark eyes, and wore red lipstick. She wore a short-sleeved black and purple blouse and black pants, both of which had a design similar to clouds, purple fingerless gloves, and a chain of blue beads wound around her left hand. And she also wore the standard Kumoga Hit sandals and a kanai holster strapped to her right thigh. And on her arms and legs, she wore bandages and a red belt around her waist. Then there was the Kumo sensei. He has dark skin with a muscular build as well as white hair and a goatee. And on his right shoulder, he has a tattoo of the kanji for iron. And on his left cheek, he has a tattoo of a bull's horn. And his top lip also has a slightly darker hue than his bottom one. He wore oval-shaped sunglasses and a white-colored hood with his village's standard one strap over one shoulder, flak jacket with a yellowish trim and a long red rope belt tied around his waist, the traditional Kumo hand and Shinobi sandals, and a white scarf around his neck, and he carries 7 swords on his back. Both were looking over 2 Suna Genchiri, with the female Genchiriki looking ready to fight him while her sensei looked prepared to grow to his tailed beast tails. Next was the Kirijin Churiki. The first was the Kunoiki, whose attire consisted of a black backless sleeveless undershirt and black stretch pants, a white crop jacket with a high collar which covers the lower part of her face downward while bearing a good portion of the lower half of her. And the jacket has a zipper running along its entire length which is opened from the bottom upwards that has beige air filters on either side just below the trim. The jacket's sleeves completely envelop her arms, terminating in black glove-like extensions at her extremities, resembling the appearance of a cat's paw. She had long, messy brown hair, 3 braided locks, and brown eyes, a large red sash around her waist, and a kiri hit sewed into the left sleeve of her jacket. On her head are some goggles, and she has thigh-length boots. Then the kiri sensei, a tall thin young man with pale golden eyes and brown hair that reaches to his shoulders with very narrow eyes and the side parting let a large portion of his bangs cover the left side of his face. He wore a full-body grey suit and a variant of the village's flak jacket with very low shoulder guards, a zipper, and a pouch on the upper right chest. He also wore the village's hit fingerless gloves and bandages on his forearms. Around his waist he had an orange sash, and at his side he had a bamboo jug with a pipe. The Kunoiki looked at the Suna Nin, and while the Iwa ninja did not know what she said, her team turned to the Suna Genchiri, and the ones with the swords got ready while the sensei shook his head. Fu also looked over to the Suna Nin. Her face had changed as she spoke to her team, smiling all day. But now she had a frown on her face. Then there was Naruto, whose eyes turned purple as he looked at the Suna ninja. Back over with the Konoha ninja, and when Tenten had returned to her side, she was asked by the Hokage to meet her in his office along with Naruto and their sensei. After a while, the next 2 names were picked out. Chojuro of Kiri versus Zaku Abume. Naruto looked down at the Odo ninja. He bit into a lion before looking over to the now named Chojuro. Shoujo has short tufty blue hair and dark eyes. From what Naruto could see, he had pointed shark-like teeth. He wore square black-rimmed glasses connected to ear protectors, a blue pinstriped shirt, and camouflage patterned pants. He wears his hitty aid on the front of his holster, which he uses to carry his sword. That sword has a wide flat blade with 2 curved indentations near its base, creating a sort of crossword with 2 handles connected to one another by a short length of cord, and the overall sword looks like a flounder fish in shape. When not in use, Haramakare is wrapped in bandages and it was on his back, leaving only the double hilt visible. He also has shuriken holsters strapped onto each of his legs. Both of them walked down, and Na saw that Zaku had broken arms. Naruto raised a brow and looked over to Sakura. Didn't I only break one of his arms? He asked Sakura, who nodded as Kakashi looked confused. I was separated from the team, and when I rejoined them, I used an ability that I got from Mom to turn into a lion and from Zaku's left arm, Naruto told him. Kakashi nodded and looked down. Kakashi narrowed his eyes as he looked at Zaku for a while. It looks like he's faking it, Kakashi told him as Naruto narrowed his eyes as he looked at Zaku. How can you tell? Na asked as Hairtate stood between them. Look at his right arm and tell me what you see, Kakashi said as Naruto and Sakura looked down as the match started. He's moving his right hand, Sakura said as Kakashi nodded. The arm is not deformed, Naruto added for her as Kakashi nodded once more. Yep, and that is only a small part of what you told me about your mother's domains. So I have to ask, do you have hunter's eyes? Kakashi said, then asked Na, who nodded. If you look at him, you can see slight tremors from him over his left arm, but none from his right, Kakashi added as Naruto looked at Zaku and saw that Kakashi was right. His left arm is slightly swollen as you can see, and you can tell that his arm is slightly bleeding. Artemis added from Kakashi, who nodded as Naruto narrowed his eyes at Zaku and saw there was a bit of blood seeping down Zaku's arm. Zaku moved his arms as he moved his arms to point at Chojiro's anchor. Zaku yelled out as he sent out chakra sound waves and air waves from his hands. Now his right hand sent the triple mix of chakra sound waves and airwaves that shot out at Chojuro. While his left arm exploded off his arm, Naruto had not only broken it when he was a lion, but he somehow locked the hole and made it so that it blocked the chakra going to the hole in his hand. When the arm exploded with nothing left, the bone splintered and flesh and blood spread to the floor. Sakura looked away and hid her eyes in Naruto's chest as Hinata closed her eyes. Chojuro moved forward as he drew his sword and with the flat side using it as a bat knocked Zaku into a wall. As Zaku looked up, Chojuro had finished going through a set of seals and had ended on the bird seal. Sweden. Dakufu no Jutsu. Chojuro called out before he expelled a large volume of water from his mouth at Zaku. The water hit Zaku, basting him into the wall once more and forcing him to close his eyes. And when he opened them, he saw that Chojuro was running at him and tried to raise his remaining arm. But Chojuro was faster. Shiro no Jutsu. He called out as the water around Zaku formed into a sphere around the Odo Nin. Chojuro placed a hand on the sphere and looked at Zaku. Please give up or I will use lightning release to electrocute you from within that sphere. Chojuro asked him. But Zaku moved his arm. So Chojuro's hand that was on the sphere started to gain electricity and he started to shock Zaku. Chojuro cut the electricity off and asked Zaku once more. But before he could, Hayate walked over and shook his head and called out, "Wind a Cho of Kiri," he said as Chojuro released the water sphere and Zaku raised his arm to fire a blaze at the Kiri Nin. But Hayate at a sword to Zaku's thought. "Don't even try it," Hayate said as Zaku glared as medics came and took him away. Sakura, who had turned back to the match to see Zaku lose, took a deep breath and then let it out before turning to Na. "How were you okay with watching that?" she asked him. "I wasn't," Na told her as the Konohan looked at him. "But I know what this job needs, and so I knew that I need to keep a cool head," Na said as he looked down at Sakura. "It's not easy to do," he added as she nodded. "But it helps you deal with what we have to do in this job," he said as the older ninja nodded. After the battlefield was cleaned, the next two names were picked. Karui of Kumo versus Shizuka of Natashiko village. The next two combatants walked down as they. Karui was a dark-skinned kunoichi with long spiky red hair and amber eyes who wore a long short-sleeved dress with frilly edges complete with something that looked like the Kumoga flak jacket, too simple. Yellow earrings, fishnet stockings, thigh-high boots with white soles and a hit-8 which she wears like a bandana and she was carrying a long sword on her back. On the other hand, Shizuka was a fair-skinned girl of average height with an athletic yet curvaceous build with green eyes and waist length. Black hair in a him-style cut tied in a high ponytail with short bangs and chin-length strands framing her face. She wore a black hit-8 and wore her village's form-fitting kunoichi uniform which was grey-colored with a right shoulder guard, grey gloves, and an opening in her shirt which revealed some of her sizable cleavages. May the 11th match begin. Hayate called out as both kunoichi charged at each other. Na once more glared down at the Kumo ninja as the blonde Kumo Jinchuriki walked over to Na. "Why are you glaring at my teammate brother?" she asked Na. Na looked at her with narrowed eyes. "How about that Kumo tried to kidnap a good friend of mine when she was younger as well as my mother when she was younger?" Naruto said to his sibling of burden. "And let me not forget that my clan's homeland is no more than rubble because of your village." He hissed as his Renegan looked into the Kumo Jinchuriki. Yo, you got to let that go. Our villagers are seeking peace. So set your mind at ease." The Kumo sensei rapped at Na who looked at him with a raised bow. "My brother brought the body of the man back and he would like to apologize for the attack." He added as the female Jinchuri sighed. "Sorry about my sensei," she said as she bowed to the ninja who looked at the man. "He dreams of becoming a world-famous rapper," she added as the man looked over to her. "Yugito, why are you being harsh, so stop being an ass," he told her as the now named Yuito's eyes started to twitch. Naruto let the words from both of them go through his head and he knew that they were telling the truth. Na looked to his mother who looked at him with a caring smile. She even turned to Diana and she was still smiling at him. So Naruto let out a sigh. "I apologize for what I was doing," Naruto said as he bowed to his Genturki siblings. Both Yugo and her sensei turned to him and looked at him. Sakura smiled before she turned to Yugo. "You said that Naruto was your brother. So does that mean," she asked her, "that we're Jinchuriki?" Yugo asked Sakura who nodded. Yep, I'm the Genturkey of Matabi the Nibi. Yugito said as Sakura looked both amazed and confused. And so were most of the people. Now my name know my fame. Don't be lame. The Kumo sensei started to rap as his students sighed eat. 8 tails. That's me. D rapping Killer B. Ginyuri of Guyuki. The now Killer B said as everyone looked at him. You named your BJU. Kakashi asked them as they both looked at him confused. No, they were named by the Rakudo Sennin. Killer B said as people looked amazed. He then looked at Naruto's eyes and with the eyes of Thin Nin B added, but Yugito beat him. With your Renegan being the eyes of the Rakudo Sennin, Yugito told Naruto as the blonde going crimson nodded. Yay. He came to me and told me before blessing me and my children with the Renegan. Naruto told her as Yugo looked amazed before he turned to Sakura. And no, I do not know the name of the Kyuubi, he told her as she nodded. Karui and Shizuka were fighting Kana to katana, neither giving an inch to the other. Shizuka then slipped past the katana, kicked away from the Kumokunoiki to the side, and held a kana at Karu's throat. Hayate walked over to them and saw that Shizuka had another kana to Karu's liver and called out, winner. Shizuka of Natashiko village. Shizuka removed the kanai, bowed to Karui, and then returned to her team as Karui did the same, cursing her way up the stairs as the names shuffled once more. Artemis looked over to B with a smile. Your student did good, she said as B nodded. But I think her opponent was holding back. Artemis added as B nodded once more. What do you mean she matched her? Simui said as she walked over. Exactly. Think back what you said and you will realize that it's a fact she won, B said. People looked confused as they all turned to Artemis. If I'm right that Shizuka is the princess of Natashiko and was trained to take down a platoon of genin, Artemis said as. B nodded. And so that means that she matched your teammate so that she would not feel down on herself. The goddess told as Simui nodded. That is both cool and not cool at the same time. Simui said before Naruto laughed as Simui turned to him. What? She asked Na. Just a thought, and it's that if she was fighting a shinobi, would she fight on the same level or would she go all out on them? Naro asked aloud, and I just find that funny Dado, he added as Artemis turned to him. And you are right as the law of that village. Artemis said as Naruto looked at her and saw that she had a tweaking eye. What is it? Naro asked her. Your grandfather beat a Natashiko kunoiki once, and instead of following their rules, he told her that she must not follow them. And so she saw that their students or children would fight, and if he had a son and beat her daughter, they must marry. Artemis growled as Naruto looked at his mother confused. Then when asking to become allies, the daughter of the woman that your grandfather defeated met your father who turned her do. WN, and now her daughter is here. And I can't help but think that this time it's going to stick. She added as glared at the ground. Which grandfather? Na asked her. Your father's father. Diana growled as the next two names were picked out. Guren of Kusvese, Omoi of Kumo. Omoi is a young dark-skinned Kumo nin with short spiky white hair and dark eyes accentuated with eyelashes curving upwards from the corners. He wore a dark outfit consisting of an overall shirt with a hood, red bandage handguards, Kumoga shin guards, a black high-8, and something that looked like with Kumoga flak jacket, and he carried a long sword on his back. Guren wore a short teal kimono with a grey turtleneck and short sleeves with a jade green rope belt around her waist, red shorts, light purple wristbands and navy blue sandals. She had strands of hair that framed her face were shorter with dark teal hit on her right bicep. Hayate stood in the middle of the two of them as he looked between them before he raised his hand. Begin, he called out as he jumped back. Omoi drew his sword and started running at Guren before he froze. He could not move. Wow. Naruto muttered as he looked down at the battlefield. People looked amazed by what they saw. From under Guern's feet and covering Omoi from the waist down as covered in crystal. As this arcade Genka, Kakashi asked as he looked at it with his dojutsu. She sent her chakra across the floor to make it crystal. And Omoi stepped on it. She trapped him. Yugito said as she shook her head. Na narrowed his Renegan as he looked at the crystal before drawing everyone's attention. It's a Kek Genka. All right. And it's made of earth release and something else. But I'm having trouble seeing what that other is. Naruto told them as they looked amazed. You can see that? Asuma asked him. And Naruto at the blonde going crimson's nod. Asuma looked down. Does the other element have a color? he asked Na. Na looked intensely at the crystal so much so that his veins bulged near his temples. Lee turned to his teammate and his head to the side. Is he activating Byakugan? He asked Neji, who looked at Na. It looks like it, Neji said as he blinked at Na. No, he's using a technique from a Manekio sharing, Diana said as she decided to watch for a while. It only looks like he's using the Bakugan, she said as Neji nodded. The veins around Naruto's eyes returned to normal after he blinked a few times. All right, I have it, Naruto said as the people around him turned to him. Crystal release is made up of both earth release and lightning release, Naruto told them as they looked down at the crystals. Omoi tried to move as he called electricity to his sword. I can't lose because if I do, Kumo will be seen as weak. And then Rakage-sama will punish the one responsible by having them help B-sensei make a rap video. Omoi yelled out as everyone looked at Omoi questionably. Naruto and Sakura looked at each other, then turned to Diana, who looked confused. Kakashi blinked and cod his head to the side. Tenten looked at Neji, who shrugged. Kurenai shook her head at what was just said. Hinata looked confused. Tamari looked at her sensei, who looked amazed by the stupidity of the Kumo nin. There he goes again, Karui said as Choji turned to her. What do you mean? He asked her. Omoi has this habit of being pessimistic and blowing it out of proportion, Yugito said as the other Kumo ninja nodded. Hayate walked over to Omoi. Can you move? He asked the Kumo genin, who shook his head. Winner of the 12th match goes to Guren of Kusa, he called out as he turned to Guren. He pointed at the crystal around Omoi and then it broke off him as they both walked back to their teams, with Omoi walking back with his head hung low. The names got shuffled once more as Omoi returned to his team and found them talking to the Konoha ninja. What happened while I was down there? Did B-sensei current the Konohan believe that he could make music? Omoi asked before he dummy slapped by said person, but before something could be said, the next names were picked quickly. Tamari of Suna versus Kinyuki. The remaining Odo ninja walked down. As Tamari jumped down and unconnected her fan from her back as Chin reached the battlefield and met Tamari there, she looked ready to fight as she placed her hand in her pouch. Begin, Hayate called out as he jumped back and Kin True Sunburn at Tamari, who moved her fan in front of her and opened it to show a purple circle, and a blast of wind blew the sunbeam away. First moon, Tamari said as Chin's eyes shot wide. Wind release, she muttered as she looked at Tamari, who nodded. She then looked up at her sensei to see snake-like eyes looking down at her, and they held a message. Do not fail me. Sochin pulled out more sunbeam and threw them at Tamari, who opened her fan more to show a second purple circle and sent a blast of wind out that sent the sunbeam again, but this time it was more powerful. Chin had some of the sunbeam stuck in her second moon. Tamari said as she looked at Chin, there is only one left before I end this match. So do yourself a favor and quit now, she told the Odo Kunoiki. But Chin, even though she knew she would not hit the Sun Kuni, sent more sunbeam out. Still, Tamari fully opened her fan and sent another gust of wind. Third moon, she said before she took hold of her fan and waved it in Chin direction. Kadiaki no Jutsu, Tamari called out as she sent out currents of wind to collide with each other, making something that looked a cyclone that had Chin trapped in the center. Chin was getting cut up by the countless blades of wind within the cyclone. She was getting hit at all sides by wind currents. She did not know what was happening before her world went dark. As she fell, Tamari closed her fan and Quinn fell on it with her back, landing on the fan. Tamari was named the winner as she walked back up. That match was brutal, Naruto muttered as people around him nodded. It goes to show that there are people younger than yourself, but stronger, Kurenai said as the other sensei nodded. Kamaran Yumhara Viscar in Azuka. If you can guess who Kamaran Yumi Nohara is, you may have a cookie. The Kiri female Genshiriki walked down, as did Karani's final student and Hana's little brother. Like most of his clan, Ka has messy brown hair, sharp black eyes with vertical slit-like pupils, pronounced canine teeth, and nails that he can change into claws. He also has the distinctive red fang markings of the Inazuka clan on his cheeks. Ka's attire consisted of dark grayish pants reaching to his calves and a gray hooded fur-lined coat with the hood usually placed on his head with a blue forhi ad protector and blue sandals. At his side was his Ninken partner, who was a small dog with white and some brown fur on his ears and resembled a Great Pyrenees. He was being carried on Ka's head with the dog's eyes squinted appearing closed, and he had a brown nose as well as brown patches on his ears. And a brown outline around his mouth, and the fur on top of his head is styled to somewhat resemble a mohawk. Cameron and Ka stood in the middle as Hairtate looked him over before setting his gaze on Chimaran. She looks familiar, he thought as he raised his hand. May the 14th match begin. Hayat called out. Shikyaku no Jutsu. KBA called out as he sank to the floor on all fours with chakra coming off him. Cameron looked at him with no emotion as Ka growled at her before she held out her hand, gained a puff of smoke, and a weapon appeared. It looked to be a cross between a trident, a Bishaman Yari, a Japanese spear, and a GI, a Chinese halberd with a crystalline appearance that bears a blue horsehair tassel. Similarly, the two side blades are straight with concave edges as opposed to the usual crescent blades of the Bishaman Yari, and the end of the trident turns into a corkscrew shape. But she just held the trident in her hand as she twirled it, and water formed from the corkscrew bottom at the end. Ka did not heed the trident as he threw something at his Nink, who ate it, and it turned the dog's fur red. You ready, Akamaru? Ka growled at the hound as both ran at Cameron. She spun her trident around as water spewed out of the corkscrew, forming a circle of water and making a mirror out of the water before she hooked one of the trident's blades on the mirror and flipped around. After a few turns in a second, Ka and Akamaru came out of the mirror. As the copies ran into the real ones, they pushed the real ones back before they burst like water balloons, and Kamaran spun her trident once. Ka and Akamaru shook off the water on him as Narad looked down at them. She has good control over water. Narad muttered as he looked at his Genshuriki. Yay, Yugito said as she watched the match closely. From what Matabi tells me, Isabu the Sandy give his Genshuri the ability to control and make Karel a strong water affinity and a Genjutsu mist. She added as everyone looked amazed. Not going to move. Ka growled at her. Well then, let's go Akamau. He called out at Akamaru and jumped on his back. Ka, don't let your ego get the better of you. Karani thought as Hana approached them. Kurinai smiled before she looked down at her student. Jujin Bunchen Ka called out as Akamaru turned into a clone of Ka while still on his back. Suparu Samakogo Kamaran called out as she formed water beneath her that turned into a drill-like vortex that shot at Ka and Akamaru. Hana turned to Kurini before she started to shake her head. I don't think that Ka is going to win, she said as Karani nodded. After hearing Chimir's voice, Kakashi narrowed his lone eye as he looked at her. Who is she? He thought as he looked over her. Diana switched back to Artemis and then looked down at the battlefield as she heard the voice before her eyes widened slightly. As that she asked herself. Seeing that he was constantly getting pushed back, Ka looked over to Armau and then they both jumped into the air and started spinning at high speed before they made their way to Chimaran. She jumped in the air and seeing that one of them was coming, she formed a shell on her back. The drilling cyclone bounced off the shell as Chimiran held out her trident and pointed it at the oncoming cyclone. Borotekas Karashu, she called out as water burst out of the trident and shot at the cyclone and not only pushed it back, but forced it to stop spinning. But she forgot about the other as it hit her in the side, which sent her flying to the ground on her back, her jacket around her mouth cut. I got overconfident, she swore in her head. Well, you did spend 13 years in a coma, Herb told her as she stood up. And I had half my power in somebody else, so I could not heal you fully until I fully returned to you, he added as Chimaran nodded. Both vortexes go by the name Ka and Akamaru around and head back to her. Cameron held up her trident before she slammed it into the ground as water burst out from under her before she started to go, thou a tone of seals. She then ended up on the bird shield as the water started moving, rising, and taking shape like a serpentine dragon. Sweden swear and no jutsu Kamaran called out as she sent the water dragon at the cyclones and it pushed them back. Ka and Okamau who were still transformed and looked like Ka stopped their cyclones as they looked at Chimiran and found that she was running at them leaving her trident in the ground as she formed the shell on her back once more in a single long armored tail before she jumped into the air and then curled up into a ball and started to roll at Ka at high speed, with Kamaran on the attack this time and Ka jumping around to try to dodge the attacks. Soon he was hit in the chest by the rolling Kirik Kunoiki. The people on the observation decks were watching in amazement as both Hana and Na gained a look in their eyes. What you thinking? Sakura asked Na. Well, I was thinking about making something like that, but a me version, Na said as he started to go over plans about how he could do it. What would you call it? Artemis asked her son as Naruto turned to her. Is it going to be a taijutsu or a normal enjutsu? She asked as Naruto closed his eyes as he started to think. Before they could speak more, the ball named Chimaran jumped in the air, stopped rolling, and formed a seal familiar to Team 7. Kage Bunshin, no jutsu, she called out as two clones formed next to her. And then all three of them turned into balls and made their way to Ka. Now that is just not fair, Shoji said as he looked down at the battlefield. Not only does she have a jutsu that is like my clan, but she has a better version. He whined as Asuma laughed at his student. That is life, Choji, Shikamaru said as she turned her head at the laugh that escaped Naruto's mouth. Shut up, you bastard. She hissed at him. Ka and Akamaru were soon running out of steam. And it showed as more quickly KBA moved out of the way of one of the rolling women. Another hit him in the side. And then he knew that it was over as one of the clones hit him in the chest and steamrolled over him, soon followed by another, then another before, more quickly, a large cloud of dust formed. Everyone waited to see what had happened to Ka and Akamaru. And when the smoke had cleared, it showed that both of them were knocked out as the three Chimirans uncurled and stood up. Hayate walked over to Ka and checked on him before he raised his hand. Winter Cameron Yum Nohara, he called out as Chimaran's clones popped out as she walked over to her trident and picked it up before stopping and then walking over to Ka. Hayate got ready to attack but said, I know medical enjutsu. As Hayate let her pass, she knelt by the downed Ka and held her hands over him as they started to glow green and she began healing him. Now that is just strange, be said for once, not rapping as Naruto and Yugito nodded. What is? Kakashi asked him. She's a Genturi and she can perform medical enjutsu. Artemis said equally shocked as the Genturi. Chimaran then stood up and looked at the Hokage who looked her in the eye before nodding slightly before she walked back to her team as the next two names were picked. Suetsu Huzuka versus Han of Iowa. Han walked down as Chimiran passed her teammate on the up. Sugyu is a lean-built young man of average height with straight white hair, a light blue tint, and almond-shaped purple eyes. He has pointed teeth, one of which sticks out even when his mouth is closed. He wore a purple sleeveless shirt with blue pants, sandals, and a belt around his waist with water bottles attached to it. And he also wore another belt strapped to his chest, which he used to carry a sword that had all mem. Boers of Team 7 looking amazed and shocked. Na blinked before turning to Sakura. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Naruto asked her as she nodded. Zabuza's blade. Naruto asked as the Kiri ninja looked over to them. You knew Zabuza-sama? Chojuro asked as he walked over to them. And Team 7 nodded. Can you tell me how he died and why Kubi Kiribio was in the ground with his body? He asked as the Kiri-sensei nodded as Hayate started the next match. Well, he was hired by God who was trying to take over the wave. Sakura started as Naruto nodded. Matam was sent there on the pretense of AC rank mission. But when we met Zabuza, it was bumped up to an A- rank, Kakashi added as the Kiri ninja nodded as Sugetsu held his hands out on finger pistol and started to shoot water bullets at Han. We fought him and his apprentice twice with the second time leading to the apprentice's death first before God, turning on Zabuza, and then Zabuza killed him. But the wounds that gained killed him, Naruto said as the swordsman nodded. As for the sword in the ground, we were using it as a grave marker. He added at Sakura and Kakashi's nod. I see, the sensei said as he took a breath in before he sighed. Thank you for telling me. I'll inform the Mizukage about this so that she knows what happened, he said as Kakashi nodded before stopping. Sorry, did you say she? Kakashi asked as Artemis also turned to him. Don't you mean he? As the young Dame Mizukage is in charge, Kakashi added as the man nodded. Did you not know that our tyrant of a cage was killed and replaced? He asked the Konohan who turned to the Hokage. Along with most other villagers, they did not know a new Mizukage existed. I did say the current Mizukage has the ability of Hashoku Haki. He said with a smile. Oh. Guy said as he looked at the Kiri-sensei. Anyway, I'll inform her and so you will have the reward for the information, he said as he turned back to the field to see that Sugetsu had trapped Han in a large ball of water. And just like that, Sugetsu has lost. He said as Kamaran nodded as Chojuro looked confused. What do you mean Udakata sensei? He asked. The Gobi has the power over boil release. The now named Udakata said as Chojaro's eyes shot wide. If Suetsu stuck to Kenjutsu, he would have had a chance of winning. But now, the Genturki said, shaking his head. And to prove his point, Han started to let out chakra as the water around him began to bubble. What the? Sugetsu said as he felt the water heat up until steam began to come off the ball of water. Ow ow, Sugetsu said as he let the square of a water drop as he held his hands before Han zoomed in on him with red chakra around his fists. Be punched the Kirin Nin, and all Sugetsu could do was take each punch, and before Sugetsu knew it, he was knocked out. He is not going to like that, Chimirin said as Udakata nodded. And Hayatate called the match and named Han the winner. As Han walked back to his team, the 8 remaining people looked around as they waited for the next 2 names to be picked. Na had a small laugh, so Kakashi turned to him. What is it? He asked him. 3 of the remaining 8 are Genshuri, Naruto said as the Konohajin looked around and found that Naruto was right as Naruto and Yugito hadn't gone yet, or the Sun Genshuri. Kakashi looked at the board before saying make that 2, he said before looking down at Na. You're up, he told him as Naruto looked over and saw that Kakashi was right. But what shocked him was that it showed his full name. Na Namikaze Azuaki versus Kuretsuki of Iowa. Kuretsuki looked shocked. Then Mudu's as she looked at Naruto as he jumped down. Kuretsuki Roshi said as she turned to him, your grandfather does not want his blood or attack Konoha. So to not do anything rash, he told her as she also jumped down. They met in the middle as people looked shocked by Naruto's middle name. But then they saw that Kuretsuki glared at Na. And Na was doing the same to her. I'm going to destroy you for what your father did to my village. Kuretsuki growled at him. Then I'll do the same in the name of my clan's men. Na growled back. Hayatate looked back at Hirozen as Artemis sighed. Why does he have to be more like me than Monado? She asked aloud. Hai nodded. So Hayat turned back to the battle to see both of them were ready to fight. He raised his hand and then brought it down. Begin, he called out. The 2 ran at each other with a fist coiled back, with Kuretsuki's fist becoming stone and growing slightly while Naruto's fist was glowing golden orange. And then the fists met, but with the power that both of them were using, they were both pushed back before Kuretsuki went. Thou the snake ran and bird seals before the ground turned into spikes around Na, who grabbed the Yodo and took a swipe with it, sending out a thin blade of wind. And like in the forest, Tenten did not see a blade of wind. She saw a hawk flying thou the rock spikes and heading for Kuretsuki. Naruto's right fist moved out a small bit as rockets appeared out of his arm before he raised said arm and fired all the missiles at Kuretsuki. The missiles saris around in the air before and then flew to where Kuretsuki was, but a large dome of earth formed beneath her, shielding her from the explosions and the wind blade coming at her. The dome crumbled to the ground to find that Kuretsuki was no longer there. Na cursed under his breath as he held his hands out. Shinrai Na called out as he sent out an invisible blast of chakra from around him. It hit Kuretsuki, who was invisible as Na turned to her. Naruto then appeared in front of Kuretsuki with his sword raised high. Kuretsuki pulled out a kana and another kana versus sword match happened. Artemis saw Kakashi look at the spot where Naruto once was before she looked back to see Na and Kuretsuki fighting. You've worked out his technique, she asked as he nodded to her. He can change places with something within visual range, right? He asked her as she held her hand out and rocked it side to side, as if to say yes and no. But before she could say any more, Naruto formed another hand and went thou seals before placing a finger on Kuretsuki's shoulder. Raiden Bakurai, he called out as a blast of lightning shot out of his finger and thou Kunoiki's shoulder. But she did not take the hit, lying down as she kicked straight up, her left leg hitting Naruto in the chin. But the 2 kept the sword and kana in places as people watched the battle there. Even Han said to Roshi as the older Genshuriki nodded. It's a battle to see whose ideals are stronger and who has the bigger resolve. Baki told his students as Kuretsuki pulled out a second kana as Naruto stuck with the Yodo. So you must not take your eyes off the battle at any moment. Asuma said to his 3 students, Ino, who had woken up to see the fight as so each sensei had told each student to watch who had the bigger resolve. VE. Avenge hundreds of Iwa ninja or avenge hundreds of Uzumaki. No one could take their eyes off the fight as Naruto and Kuretsuki cut each other up, but they did not care. In a twist of the fight, they both managed to disarm the other as Kuretsuki's kana flew into a wall that they became embedded in it while the Yodo did the same, but to the other side of them. Both of them jumped away from each other, but not before launching a jutsu at the other. Yoden Sakaidio no Jutsu Kaiden. Goku no Jutsu, they called out. Kuretsuki spat out a glob of quicklime as Na breathed a large fireball. Flames and quicklime met each other and became hardened rock as they fell to the floor. Na narrowed his eyes. This is getting me nowhere, he thought before he held out a hand. Banchanso Tenon, he called out as Karachi was pulled off her feet and was heading straight for Naruto at an alarming rate uncontrollably. And Naruto raised his leg and made sure to aim for her neck and called out, Shinobi, and slammed Kuretsuki into the ground so hard that the ground beneath her racked on impact. Na looked down at Kuretsuki, pulling his fist back and then shooting it forward into Kunoiki and going further into the ground, and all the air from her lungs was taken out. Kuretsuki looked dusted as Naruto opened his hand as Yodo jumped out of the ground from where it had been invaded and spun through the air into Naruto's waiting hand. She looked up at him and felt fear him. As he looked down at her, she saw a beast ready to kill her and send her to the Shinigami. "Do it," she said as she looked at Na, who just looked at her. "Come on, you monster. Be like your clan of bloodthirsty warriors and take my life," she said as she slowly pickets herself off the floor. "No," Na said as he turned around and started walking away before stopping and then looking up to his mother, who smiled and nodded before he looked back at her. "I won this battle and unlike Iowa, I don't take innocent life," Naruto told her as the Konoha ninja smiled as he continued walking away as Kuretsuki looked at him before she fell back, knocked out. As he walked off, he saw his mother looking at him as steam came off his body and he rejoined his team. As they saw that all his injuries had healed up, Hinata looked at him, seeing that he was all healed up and put the pot she was holding away in her pouch as Karani smiled down at her. "Maybe next time," she told her student. Artemis looked at her son with a smile as the medial ninja took Kurostachi away. "I'm proud of you, and I have no doubt that your father and grandfather would as well," she told him as Naruto gained a small smile. But he could not help himself. "Which grandfather?" he asked her. "Your Uzumaki grandfather," she said right back with a motherly smile. Before they could talk more, the next two names were picked. Hinata Hyuga vs Neji Hyuga. Hinata is a slender girl of fair complexion who is a Hyuga. Her most distinguishing trait is the Bakugan, giving her featureless lavender eyes as she has dark blue hair that she keeps in a him-cut hair that is cut just above her forehead akin to a bowl cut with chin-length strands framing her face. Hinata wore a cream-colored hooded jacket with a fire symbol on the upper sleeves and fur around the cuffs and hem with navy blue pants and kept her head loosely around her neck. Hinata met Neji in the middle of the area with Hair Tate standing between them. "Hello Nini," Hinata said to him timidly. "What the na?" asked as he was hit over the head by his mother as he looked down. "Don't curse around your mother," Artemis told him. "Did Hinata ever say she had a bother?" Ino asked Sakura, who shook her head. "No. From what Nei told me, Hinata is the ace of the Hyuga clan and he is her cousin." Lee told him as they looked at him. "Hanata-sama, I must ask you too." Neji started speaking before the voice of Ka called out. "Hanata fight," he said as everyone turned to him to see that he was getting held back by doctors. "Show him who you are," Ka said before his sister dragged him off as Artemis looked at her with a smile. "Like brother, like sister," Hana heard in her head as she saw Artemis with a large smile. Hana said nothing before she went after her brother. Both Haya started activating their Bakugan as they both took a stance. The same stance begin. Hayat called out as Haugen at each other with great speed and started hitting small points in the body. No one said a word as the cousins found fast as only a few could keep up with their eyes. "What are they doing?" Ino asked as she watched the fight. "They're not hitting the other," Shikamaru added as she looked down at the fight. "Wrong," Naruto said as they looked at him. "They're hitting the Tenkitsu." He told them, his eyes not leaving the battle. Those around him saw his eyes moving quickly as he saw every hit aimed at both Hyuga. "And it's not looking good for Hinata," Naruto said as everyone looked at him. "Nei is aiming to shut down her arms while Hinata is going to the main points where chakra forms." The blonde Uzumaki said as people saw both Artemis and Kakashi nod. "All she needs to do is hit the right spot and she can finish this match," Artemis said as Hinata started to push Neji back. But that was what he wanted. Neji went forward with a double strike. One aimed at Hinata's heart and the other at the upper part of Hinata's arm. Na closed his eyes as those around him looked at him before they realized what had happened. Neji had won. The strike that hit Hinata's heart made her cough up blood that fell onto her jacket as her eyes shot wide. And Sane started to go harder in his assault on her as each hit was harder and faster than the last until Hinata fell to the floor and Neji began to walk away before a gasp was heard through the room. Ne stopped and turned around to see that Hinata was back on her feet. Why do you get back up? You're a failure to our clan. He told her, but she did not hear his words as she looked at him. You fight for nothing but hope when you have been fated to lose to me, Ne added. But once more the words did not go through to her as she looked at him. That is where you are wrong, Hinata said as she struggled to stay standing. You are the one who is fighting for the hope that you can break the chains of the caged bird, Hinata said as Neji's face became murderous. And you said that I was fated to lose, but you are currently fighting fate yourself as you try to kill me. But we are no different, she told him as Neji laughed himself at her with a strike right at her heart. But the sensei and Hayate stopped him with Kakashi holding one arm while Kurana was holding the other arm. Guy hooked his arm around Neji's neck as Hayate stood just in front of Neji with his sword. You won, walk away, Kakashi said as Hinata collapsed to the floor, coughing up blood. The care for the main branch is shown once more. Neji scoffed as Guy tightened his hold on his student. Naruto appeared next to her as his chakra chains shot out of him and into Hinata and steam started to come off Hinata. Someone get a medic here now. Naruto called out as he allowed Hinata his healing ability, but it was working slowly. Neji was dragged back to the observation area as a medic came over and started to heal Hinata along with Naruto and Kamaran jumping down as well as the three of them worked on healing. As they down Kunoiki, I must have a word with them, Hisan said as he watched with bated breath at the healing before Naruto retracted his chains with a sigh. The medic nodded in thanks as he rushed Hinata away and Naruto took both him and Chimiran back up to the observation area. She's going to live, Naruto said as people around him sighed as people made sure that Neji was nowhere near them in case Shino or Kurana were to try and kill him. But before they could do anything, the next two names were picked. Gar of the Sand versus Rock Lee. The Ikebe Jinchuriki appeared in a small cyclone of sand as Lee jumped down to join Gar at the bottom. But the Suna team and the other Jinchuri were on the edge as they looked down at the crazy sand user with the Jinchuri ready to jump down if Gar started to let his be sent out. Naruto-san, may I ask why you are like this? Guy asked him as Naruto looked out of the corner of his eye. Gar is what happens when a Jinchuri goes off the deep end and lives in the darkness. Naruto said as Guy's eyes shot wide. Lee heard what Naruto had said as he looked at Gar before narrowing his eyes as he grabbed the cork from the gourd that was shot his way. Please don't rush things, Lee said to Gar. Hayate smiled slightly at Lee before raising his hand. May the 18th match begin, Hayate called out. At that, Lee jumped forward with a kick, but sand rose around Gar defending him. So Lee moved in fast with another kick, but had the same result as Naruto looked on. How is he controlling the sand? Sakura asked. Does Naruto, who was still watching the match, explained, it's his Genturki ability, Naruto told her as she looked at him. As you know, each Jinchuriki have an ability. I can sense negative emotions, as we've seen with Han. He can use boil release, Naruto said as Sakura nodded along. I can make all fire release jutsu stronger. And when I do, the fire turns blue, B-sensei can make ink, Yugo added as Sakura nodded. I have a strong water release and can make coral while Udakata sensei can make acid, Kamaran added as Sakura took the information in. I can use bug jutsu. And if I remember right, the Yandi had a strong lava release, Fu added as she walked over. So does Lee have a change? Sakura asked the Jinchuri, but all she got was silence. And what shocked people more was that Han and Roshi appeared with the other Jinchuriki. Thank you, Uzumaki-san, Roshi said to Na as Naruto looked at him with a raised brow as Lee moved out of the way of a tendril of sand. What for? Naruto asked him as he returned his gaze to the match as the 8 Jinchuri stood together. Thank you for sparing my student when you had all the right to slitting her throat, Roshi said as everyone looked at him. When Muama ordered the attack on Usuzu, my older brother and I was the current such tried to persuade him to nod and ask them to step out of the war, Roshi said as Artemis looked at him. Still, he looked down, but Musama was persuasive, and I regret with my brother what I had done to Usuzu, Roshi told him as he pulled out a scroll and handed it to Na. Na looked at the scroll before looking at his mother, who nodded. So, Na accepted the scroll. Thank you for your truthful words, Na said as he turned back to the match to see that Lee was kneeling on the statue. Lee, take him off, Guy shouted as everyone looked confused as they saw Lee look over to Guy. But Guy-sensei, you said never to do that unless I was defending lives precious to me. Lee asked him, but Guy smiled at him and Naruto swore he saw a sun behind the man. Lee laughed as he rolled down his leg warmers to show that he had weights on. Leg weights, Na thought. Oh, that's good. I can move freely now, Lee said as he held onto the weights before dropping them. There's no way that a few weights will let you keep up with Gar's sand, Tamari thought. But that was soon replaced by a shocked look once the weights landed, making a loud bang, and the weights left craters in the ground. What the guy? Artemis said as his eye twitched as she looked at the weights. Why does he have an elephant's worth of weight on each leg? She asked him as the other Genin's eyes shot wide. Guy laughed at that, seemingly forgetting that Artemis was a goddess for a second. Now go, Lee, Guy told his student. Yes, sir, Lee called out before disappearing and reappeared behind Gar. The sand just managed to catch a punch heading to Gar along with two more punches and a kick before Lee disappeared again and delivered an axe kick and the kick landed. Lee like me picked up a rare chara disease that messes with us so that we have a small amount of chakra and my father did not have the money to pay for my operation. And as Sununit-sama is not here anymore, Lee could not have it either. Guy said as Artemis and a few other nodded. So I trained Lee purely on taijutsu. He informed the goddess. I see. So the weights Artemis asked him. Gar looked up at Lee, showing he now had a cut on his cheek from Lee's sandal. As per Lee's request, I triple the weights each time he gets accustomed to them. Guy told her as she nodded. He then turned to Lee. Now Lee, show the power of youth. Guy called out as he crouched down. Yes, sir, Lee called out again as he rocketed at Gar. Lee then disappeared and reappeared behind Gar once more. And as the sand user turned to face him, Lee was not there. He was in front of Gar once more and he delivered a strong punch that took Gar off his feet and a few feet back before the sand attacked L. But the boy moved out of the way, but a sound filled the room. It sounded like something cracking as things started to fall off Gar. This is bad, Conqueror said as Tamari and Baki nodded. It was Gar's face that was cracking. Or to be more accurate, it was a layer over Gar's face made out of a sand-like hammer that was cracking and falling to the floor and showed that Gar had a deranged smile on his face. The Genturkey was getting ready to jump down with Yugito's nails becoming claws. Cameron holding her trident. Rocky's skin started to head up along with Handsome. Udakata had pulled out a blowpipe. Fu had formed her wings, be taking hold of one of his swords and Naruto as the points of his chains sticking out of his body. The sand rose once more, but this time over Gar and started to fix the hammer. It also covered up the deranged smile like it was never there in the first place. Is that all? Gar asked Lee, who looked shocked, then saw that Guy had nodded at him. Hence, he started to undo the bandages that covered his arms. Guy, please tell me that you did not teach this boy that Artemis asked him. But Guy nodded. I did, and with Lee having no one, I took him in and did what my father did. Guy told her as Artemis closed her eyes before looking at him. Does he knows the risks? She asked him as Guy nodded. And he has accepted them. Artemis asked as Guy nodded again. Come on, hurry up, Gar told Lee, who glared and was running around Gar at high speed. As you wish, Lee said as he landed a kick to Gar's chin, sending him into the air. That's not all, Lee called out as he repeatedly kicked Gar into the air higher and higher away from Gar's sand. Genin, Artemis called out as they all turned to her. Watch and you shall see the pinnacle of taijutsu and know that even if Gar somehow services this attack, he would not come out of this uninjured as this is one of the strongest taijutsu. She told them as they all looked back to the match as Guy closed his eyes in prayer. I can't take my eyes off him even if I'm hurt, Lee thought as he winched, but he fought to keep his eyes open. Soon he was behind Gar with the bandages wrapped around Jinchuriki before he tightened them. And then Lee started to spin them at a great speed as they headed for the ground. Omid Ren Lee called out as they both hit the ground before Lee jumped out of the way as Gar lay on the floor with cracks forming over his body. But he was slowly getting up, but the armor fell off him, showing everyone that Gar was covered with small cuts from the stones on the ground, and Lee was winching. What's the matter with Lee? Sakura asked. It's the Omen Ren kid, Roshi said as she turned to him and found that the gentry had arranged themselves according to the number of tails they held, with Naruto standing next to her. It's a strong taijutsu technique, Udakata added as she turned to him. But it's a double-edged sword for the user as it puts a lot of strain on the body with how fast they move. Be explained to her again, not rapping just to tell Sakura how serious this was. As of right now, Lee is just a mass of pain and weakness. Kurinai said as Sakura turned to the red-eyed woman. But that is slightly fortunate that even if Gar is a gentry, he's in the same boat as Lee. Asuma finished off as his 3 students turned to him. So what's going to happen now? Ino asked as she looked down at Lee before she saw Lee gain a smile along with Guy. Why is he smiling? Neji asked as he looked down at the field. He's going to lose, he added. But Guy laughed. He's about to push Gar back soon, Guy said as everyone turned to him. Kakashi's visible eye widened as the conversation between Guy and Artemis went through his head. The lotus of Konoha will bloom a second time, he told him as Lee crossed his arm in front of his face, and Gar looked confused. Guy, you taught him the 8 gates. Kakashi shouted at Guy as Karina and Osuma's eyes shot wide and looked at Guy with equal shock. Yes, that's right, Guy said as people looked shocked and confused. He has the talent, Guy said. But Asuma cut him off. It does not matter if he has a talent for it. You taught him something horribly dangerous and forbidden, Asuma said as people turned to him. The Uren is something that should not be taught. It's at the top of list. In fact, he added as Kakashi and Kurenai nodded. This I know, but I would not teach it to him if he did not have the skill for it. Guy said as he looked down at Lee. Answer, no matter what you all say, I know that I did the right thing for my student as Lee has the same drive. I do and the same self-rule, Guy said as Kakashi. And the Konoha sensei looked away from the man. How many gates can he open? Kakashi asked him as Kuno looked down. What are the 8 gates? She asked Naruto who looked at her. He can go to Tumen. Guy said as Udakata turned to Chojaro. Chojaro watched closely as this fight is going to show how the Kirino Shinobatana Shichen and Shu lost to one man. He told his student who nodded and waited with bated breath. What are you talking about? What are the 8 gates? Sakura asked them. The 8 gates are a set of limiters set on the body. Kurana said as she looked down at Lee as chakra started to form around him. And in order to perform the Ura-Ri you must release the first 3 of the limiters. Asuma added as rocks started to float around Lee. Remove the limiters. Both Sakura and Kuno asked them. There are 8 points in the body that are called gates that are on the chakra network that is called Kim and T. He gate of opening. Human the gate of rest. Simon the gate of life. Shaman the gate of pain. Tumen the gate of closing. Kimen the gate of joy. Kalman the gate of shock. And Shaman the gate of death. Kakashi said as he showed his sharing. These gates limit the amount of chakra flowing through the body and by opening the gates the user can draw power 10 times what they normally can do even if the body is destroyed afterwards. Roshi added when the user uses Omri the first gate is opened Guy told Sakura and unknowingly Kuno and to start performing the urge he will need to open the 3rd gate and at this moment he has the 2nd gate open as well. Guy told her as she looked down at Lee. But with how Lee is at the moment shows how much of a double-edged sword this technique is, Kakashi said as he looked at Sakura. The state and technique where all 8 gates have been opened is called Hachiman Tonko no Jin. And anyone who uses as that technique will, no matter how brief, active power that surpasses the power of the 5 cage, Kakashi told her as she looked shocked. No one said anything as Naruto turned to him as more chakras started to form around Lee. What's the downside? He asked. They'll die from power overload as they moment literally meet the power of the gods and it burns them up. Artemis said as Guy sighed. Naruto, you have helped me and you are like me and yet you have beaten fate. So know this that if I do fall, I will make sure that you can help him. Lee thought as a picture of him and Naruto laughing in his mind formed as steam started to come off his skin. Guy sensei watched as I developed my Nindo. Lee said in his mind as he flung both arms out as his skin turned red. Simon, the gate of life, release, Lee called out as Gar looked shocked at Lee. Even if I fall here, I will aid others in taking you down. Showman the gate of pain. Release, Lee called out as he released more power from him, but blood started to fall from his nose. He then once more rocketed at Gar, but this time he was faster, and when he moved, he destroyed the ground beneath him. No one bar the goddess could track him as Lee kicked Gar in the chin and sent Gara into the air. As the sand came up to defend him, Lee wanted none of that as he zoomed around punching and kicking Gar all over the place in the air. Tumen the gate of closing. Release, Lee called out as he zoomed in on Gar once more as Neji looked at Lee. You are no longer my rival, nay, as I have found someone better for me to fight. So watch as I was going to use this on you, Lee thought. Lee delivered a punch to Gar's chest that sent Gar crashing to the ground, but the Genturkey failed to notice that Lee had wrapped bandages around his waist. Lee then pulled the banged up to him as Gar was dragged along. The sand can't keep up. Tamari thought as she saw Gar helpless in the air. This is not good, she added. Lee could feel his consciousness slipping as he got ready to deliver his last attack. I'm sorry that I could not fight you in the finals, nah, but if you face Gar, I will make sure that not he. Then the Ikebe will heal this attack. Lee thought as he moved a leg by his fist that held the bandage, and as Gar moved higher, Lee punched and kicked him at the same time. Urai, Lee called out before he fell unconscious in the air. Gar landed on the ground, but his gourd turned to sand as it cushioned his fall. Gar looked up at the unconscious Lee in the air as his eyes changed from green to yellow irides and pupils, each taking the shape of a black four-pointed star with 4 black dots around it. He slowly got up and held his hand out, but before he could do anything to Lee, the Genturkey jumped in. Yugito had long claws covered in blue flames pointed at the back of Gar's neck as her eyes were not her normal color. Her right eye was yellow and the left was green. Cameron had her trident pointed at Gar's chest as it trickled with water, and her eyes were now red with yellow pupils. Roshi and Han had locked their legs around Gar to stop him from moving, with Roshi's leg covered in lava and Han's armor giving off Team. And like the others, their eyes had also changed, with Roshi's eyes having yellow irides and white pupils and Han's turning to dark blue-green. Udakata had put Lee in a bubble that held the unconscious boy, and his eyes were completely black. Fu was in the air with orange-red eyes as she looked down at Gar with a jutsu ready to defend Lee. While no one could see B's eyes, they saw he had a sword to Gar's neck. And Naruto had his golden gains out as his rippled eyes were now red with a slit. No one said a word as Gar looked at his siblings of burden as they were all ready to take him out, and something told him that he must stand down. And for once he listened to it, but he could not help but ask, why are you helping him? Gar asked them as they saw. He did not know what they were doing. Bloodshed is unnecessary on this day. Yugito said as Gar looked at her. This day is to see if we can show the power that we hold, Kamaran added as Gar turned his head to her. For villages to come and be won, Roshi said as Gar looked at him. And for us to put aside grievances, Han piped up as Gar turned to him. But do not mistake us, brother. Udakata told him as the bubble that held Lee floated over Gar as Gar looked at Utada. Fu then flew closer to the ground. If you decide to take his life, she said as she formed a seal. Then as the only interloper in Konoha, B told him as lighting started to form over his sword. We will take you from my fox den and make sure that you do not see the light of day for a while. Naruto finished as all the ninja did not see the Genturi. No, they saw the Buju. Gar looked at them for a while before his eyes turned to normal. Never mind, he said as the sand beneath them turned back into his gourd. Winner Gar of the desert, Hairtate called out as Gar started to walk away. Gar's team looked at the Genturiki. Are they? Conqueror asked as Baki nodded. Yes, he said as both his students looked at him. And the QB Genturki is the one that found out that Garo was here, Baki told as both students looked shocked. All the Genturi bar Yugito was left as Hayat looked at her. It's only me and that boy up there that are left. She told him to prove her right. The board had the names. Choji Akamaki vs Yugo Ni. Shoji met Yugo at the bottom as Omoi looked at his teammates and found that Karui was looking at Choji. He looks cute, she thought as she looked at him. May the final match of the preliminary matches begin. Hairtate called out as he jumped back. Choji made a seal similar to the bird seal as his body got bigger. Go Choji, roller her over, Ino yelled out. Yugito crouched down as her body gained blue flames over it. Are you going to be my cat toy? Yugo asked him as Choji started rolling at her. Nikid and Sencha Choji called out as he rolled at Yugo. But the Genturi jumped over the ball by the name of Choji and rolled into a wall and got stuck. Oh. Shoji thought as he tried to roll out of the wall, but Yugito descended on him, shrouded in blue flames and her fist back. Juakan, Yugo called out as she sent a blast out of her fist in the form of a lion's head that rammed into Choji. And when Yugito cut her attack off, everyone found Choji knocked out. I think you went overboard there, kitten. Yugito heard Matabi in her headset as she looked at her opponent. Winder Yugo ni, Hairtate called out. Medics took Choji away. May all the 17 finalists come down here. Hai called out. The others walked down to meet Yugo at the bottom as Anko walked out with a box with a hole in it. The next stage of the Chunin exams will start in 2.5 months. But as of right now, we need to know who you are going to be fighting. His said as Enko started to walk around now. I would like for people who fought to come and pull out a number. He informed them as Enko walked over to Kakashi who was pulling for Sasaki. Sasaki has the number 2, Kakashi said as he pulled out a ball with the number 2 on it. Enko walked over to Fu. I got 9, she said as someone wrote down the names. I have 3, Shino said after he pulled out his ball. Simui was the next person and she called out 5. Sakura was next and then saw the number before saying 9 as Fu smiled at her. I got 4, Shikamaru said as she yawned. Konyuro was next before saying 3. After him was Tenten, who pulled out the number 8 before Chojuro pulled out his 6, he said as someone nodded. Shizuka was next and she pulled out 7, she called out. Guren pulled out hers and called 8 before she and Tenten locked eyes. 4. Tamari said as Shikamaru looked at her before swearing under her breath. Cameron was the next one who looked over to Shizuka. It seems that we will fight, she said as she showed the ball to Shizuka, which showed the number 7. As Anko walked away, it seems your old number is back. The Three Tails said to her, yay. Chimiran said back, I got 6, Han said as Chojaro looked at his amma. Na pulled his ball and laughed. Number 1 already, Naro said. Neji was the next one, and he pulled out the number 1 ball as well. He could feel eyes on him as a dark smile formed on Naruto aimed at him along with the fox on Naruto's shoulder. Gar then pulled out the number 2 and Yugito looked at Simui and held the number 5. So the matches of the next round of the Chunin exams are the following. Hayate called out as everyone turned to him. Naruto Namikaze Uzumaki vs Neji Hyuga. Sasaki Uchiha var of the desert. Shino Aram vs Conqueror of Suna. Shikamaru Nara vs Tamari of Suna. Yugo ni vs Simui of Kumohan of Iwa vs Chojaro of Kirikamaran Yuminohara vs Shizuka of Natashiko village Tenten of Konoha vs Guren of Kusa and finally Sakura Haranov vs Fu of Taki Hairtate finished as he took a breath. You will meet in the Konoha arena in 2.5 months. His said as everyone nodded. Now then go off and train and bring honor to your homes. He told them as the sensei started to lead the genin out. World of the Gods, United States of America, New York, Montauk, Northeastern Long Island. Camp Halblood, the big house. Centaur walked through a red-painted house, and went up to the attic. The centaur was a middle-aged man from the waist up with thinning brown hair, bushy eyebrows, intense brown EYs, and a scruffy beard with his lower half as a white stallion. He wore a white dress shirt with a red and gold striped tie, a black jumper, and a frayed tweed jacket. He entered the attack, walked over to a mummified woman, and looked at her with a heavy heart. What is to happen next? He asked the mummy. The mummy came to life as it spewed out green mist from its mouth and took the shape of 6 people. The first was a 9-year-old girl with mousy brown hair and fire-red eyes. She was dressed in a plain brown dress. Son of the maiden shall arrive, she said before going silent. The second was another woman that looked to be in their early 20s, had long blonde hair the color of ripe wheat, and wore a bright green dress with a dark cape, which gave her the appearance of Fr. Plant shoots breaking through fertile earth whenever she moved. And on her head, she wore a crown of woven corn leaves and adornments of poppies. Daughter of lightning returns alive, she told him before going silent. The last of them was a beautiful woman who looked to be just going out of her 20s with silver hair braided over one shoulder. She wore a dress that shimmered with colors like peacock feathers. Hate for the gods is born, she told him. The next that spoke was a very tall, imposing, and very muscular man with albino white skin, intense black eyes, and shoulder-length black hair with bangs usually covering most of his forehead, and wearing black flowing robes. The camp will be torn, he told him. The next one looked like Poseidon. A ninja shall lend aid, he told him before the centaur turned to the last one. He was tall, imposing, and very muscular with shoulder-length black hair and a gray and black neatly trimmed beard with brilliant electrically blue eyes. With a serious and proud but very handsome face, and his attire was a dark blue pinstriped suit. And the C's choice has been made, he told him before the people returned to the green smoke as the centaur wrote all of what they said him down. Naruto, Kakashi, Guy, and Tenten were in his risen office along with him as Tenten and Naruto stood in front of their sensei. Thank you both for coming here, Hirozen said to Naruto and Tenten. Why have we been summoned? Hokage-sama, Tenten asked him. The Hokage looked over to Naruto, who nodded. It has recently come to our attention that during the preliminary matches we found out something about you. He told the kunoichi in the room, who looked both shocked and amazed. What was it? Hokage-sama, Tenten asked him. Hai looked Tenten dead in the eye. It was something about your mother, he told her as Tenten was listening to him with bated breath. And what I tell you now, only a select few know, Hirozen said as Tenten nodded. Guy put a hand on Tenten's shoulder as he breathed. What about her? Tenten asked as she scoffed, acting like she did not care. But both Naruto and Hirozen could see past the look on her face. There is a reason why she is not here in Konoha, Hien said as Tenten looked at him. There are laws in place that we mortals have no control over. Naruto said as Tenten looked over to him. Both of us share one thing in common. That is that both our mothers are not mortal. Na said as Tenten looked shocked. What? Tenten asked him as she looked over before. Back to the Hokage. Na speaks the truth, he said with a nod. Naruto's mother was killed right before my eyes before turning into the moonlight and then reappeared during the preliminary matches. He told her as she looked at him. The term that is to go by is a demigod. Na said as Tenten turned back to Na. That means half god, half mortal, he added as Tenten looked at her hand. Who is my mother? Tenten asked him. Na sighed at that. Now that is the hard part, he told her as she still looked at her hands. When a god or goddess has a child, they will not be claimed by their parents until either the god or goddess is ready. Naruto said as Tenten looked up. So you can't tell me? Tenten asked as he shook his head. So what am I going to do now? She asked him. From what the talking between our mothers, she is going to claim you as her daughter when we get to camp, half-blood as mine is going to do for me. Naruto told her as Tenten looked shocked. But my circumstance is slightly different than yours as my mother is both her sides. Don't ask now, I'll tell you later, he explained to her. Hai looked over to Naruto and Tenten before taking out his pipe. How long will you be at this camp? He asked the blonde after taking a puff. The summer, then ride back to Konoha, Naruto said as Tenten looked down. I see. Then I'll allow it. But I want you both to be safe, Hai said to the both of them as they nodded with Tenten being shell-shocked. Now then, Guy, Tenten, both of you can leave as I need to talk with Kakashi and Naruto. He told both members of Team 9. Guy nodded and started to lead Tenten out, telling her what he would be teaching her this month. Once the door was closed, Hirozen looked Kakashi dead in the eye as he pressed a button on his desk. Rose, you can send in the other two now, Hirozen said before moving a finger away from the button. Soon, Sasuke and Sakura walked in as they approached the main desk to join Naruto and Kakashi. Now, before we start, I will let you know that I'm having Enonoi Yamanaka on his way here to look through your mind so I can find the truths I will say here, and now I will have it. Hai said as they all nodded. Naruto, Sakura and Kakashi knew what was happening while Sasuke had no idea what was happening. Kakashi Hatake, what have you taught Gen and Naruto Namikaze Uzumaki? Hai asked the one-eyed man. He looked at his leader and knew that he could do nothing as someone who could pull the truth out of him. The roadway was on the way. Only the ki no bori no shujio and teamwork exercises. Kakashi said as Hirozen nodded. What have you taught Gen and Sakura Haruno? Hirozen asked him. The same as Naruto, Kakashi said. I see, Hai said with narrowed eyes as he drilled his eyes into Kakashi. What have you taught Gen as Uchiha? Hirozen asked him. Kakashi said nothing as Hirozen waited patiently. But Kakashi said nothing. Kakashi Hatake, I asked you a question. The Hokage asked him as Kakashi looked up. So what have you taught Sasuke Uchiha? Hai asked him once more. I have taught him 3 fire release Enjutsu. Kaden, Ruka no Jutsu, Kaden. Ryuan Hoka Nojutsu and Kaden. Hosono Nojutsu, the Sweden En Jutsu, Suiro Nojutsu, Kakashi said as Hirozen's anger started to rise. A single earth release in Jutsu and Morija Nojutsu, and I have started teaching him how to use his second affinity. Kakashi said as he could sense the anger under the surface of his leader. Anything else? His Rasen asked him. Well, with his lightning release affinity. I taught him Raiden, Raikou and Futon, Repo, then Kino Bori no Shujio and teamwork exercises along with Naruto and Sakura. Kakashi said, but he knew that if he did not say more he would not last long, along with Suman Hoko no Shan Nojutsu Gake noi no and Saranto Kuringu, and that is all that I have taught Sasuke. Kakashi finished. I see. Hai said as he stood up and walked over to the window to look out of it. Can you answer why you had made our forces weaker than they should have been when you gained the three of them as your students? Hai asked Kakashi as Sakura looked confused. What do you mean? Hokage-sama, Sakura asked him. He did not turn around, but he did answer her. When your team was formed, Kakashi was supposed to make sure that all three of you were Jonin level before you joined this exam. And at best, two of you are Hygiene and the last one is Chunin level, Herzen said as Kakashi looked down. And that is only thanks to his summons and mother, Herzen said as Sasaki looked confused. I don't have a summon, Sasaki said as Hirozen turned around. Who said I was talking about you? He asked the Uchiha as Sasaki looked over to Na. It is Naruto, who thanks to the dragons who managed to teach him. But now then, for the real reason you are here, said as the office door opened as a blonde man walked in and he was wearing the normal Konoha-jan and uni form. Thank you for coming, Inoiki. Hai told the man. Naruto and Sakura looked at each other confused as Kakashi's eyes shot wide. Hokage-sama, is this necessary? Kakashi asked him as Sasaki looked at the man. What do you mean, sensei? He asked. Kakashi looked down at the Uchiha with a dark look. The only reason a Yamanaka is summoned with a team is for one of three reasons, Kakashi said as Naruto narrowed his eyes. The first is for prisoner transfer, Hirozen said as he looked at Sasaki. The second is to help the team through a death or something along those lines, the Hokage added as Naruto's eyes shot wide as he understood. The third is to pull information out of someone and see if they are truly loyal to Konoha. Naruto said as Hirozen nodded and Enonoi nodded as he walked up. That is right, and Hokage-sama has asked me to do this for Team 7. Enaki said as Naruto stepped to him. You want to go first? He asked the blonde going crimson. Yes was all Naruto said as Inoiki placed his hand on Naru's head. Psycho Denshin, Enonoi said as he started to look through Naruto's mind before removing it. He is loyal to Konoha. He said as he moved on to Sakura. He repeated the jutsu on her before looking at Hirozen. She is loyal as well. He said as Hirozen as Inoiki walked up to Sasaki and placed his hand on Uchiha's head. When Enonoi removed his hand, those with trained eyes could see something form in Enino's eyes as he looked at Hirozen before saying, he is also loyal, Enonoi said as Sasuke looked confused. But some would hear there was something to his voice. I see, Hien said as he looked at Inoiki. If you could step outside for a moment while I talk a little more with Team 7. He asked the man who nodded and walked out before the Hokage looked at Kakashi. So Kakashi, who will you train for the 2.5 months? Hai asked him as Kakashi looked at him and he then looked at Sasaki. I'll train, Kakashi said before Ando appeared around him with their swords pointed at him. Sasaki Uchiha is currently too powerful for a genin at his level. Hiwan said as he looked at Sasaki, who looked shocked by what was just said. He will be trained by you so long as he does not learn one of those jutsu. Herwan said as Kakashi felt the swords around him. Am I understood? He asked Kakashi, who nodded. Kakashi looked saddened by that. Understood. Hokage-sama, he said. And who will teach your other two students? Hai asked him as Kakashi shrugged. Hirozen's eyes narrowed. Sorry, what was that? Hai growled out. The silver-haired man gulped as he looked at Hirozen. I mean, I'll have Ebizu teach Sakura while I find someone for Naruto. Kakashi said as Hirozen kept his narrowed eyes on the man. I see, Kakashi. You and Sasuke may go as I will assign teachers for them, as it seems that you are unable to pick someone to do the job. Hai said as he sent Kakashi and Sasaki away as Aikioi walked back in but saw Naruto and Sakura but was stopped. By Hirozen. Gigi. I know something was up with Sasuke's loyalty test. Naruto said as Sakura looked at him. Enonoi-san told a lie. He can only say yes or loyal. Naruto said as Enonoi smiled. You're right, kid, but that is only something I can reveal with Hokage-sama. Eneki said as Naruto and Sakura nodded. Anyway, I ask you both something. Keep an eye on Sasuke, and if you think that he cannot be trusted, you may use lethal force. Hai told them as they nodded before looking at Sakura. Now then, Miss Haruno, I'm going to have Kat here train you. Hai said as the purple-haired Ambu appeared next to him. I'm also going to ask Medical who is called Panda so that he can teach you medical enjutsu. Kat told Sakura who smiled and nodded. Na just looked at her. Now Na, were you going to ask the dragons for training? Hai asked the Uzumaki. Eneki looked shocked as Na nodded. That's right, but I have a feeling that you have a better idea, Naruto said. Hai snapped his fingers as another Andrew appeared next to him. But this one had a tiger mask. I'll have Tiger here along with my student Jiraiya. Teach you, Hai said as Naruto looked shocked at him. Monkey, go and retrieve my student. He told an Ambu with a monkey mask who nodded. Monkey shined away to get Hirozen's student and Naruto's grandfather. Kat left and took Sakura with her as Naruto, Tiger and Hiran waited for Monkey and Hiran's student. What will you be teaching me, Tiger-san? Na asked the Ambu who was going to teach him. Thanks to the information that Hokage-sama has given me about you, I'm going to teach you how to use wood release and help you get the QB under control, Tiger said as Naruto looked shocked and amazed. Then I just need to fight the QB for his chakra now, Na said as Hisan looked at Naruto. The dragons had me be my inner darkness or instead accept my inner self so that I could be able to become a true Genchuri. He informed them as Hisan nodded. So now all you have to do is fight QB over control of his chakra. His asked as Naruto nodded. I see. Then you can have training ground zero. He told Tiger who nodded. They descended into talking about what other things Naruto was going to be trained on. And as an hour passed, Monkey returned with a man bound in steel wire before Monkey disappeared into the rafters of the office. The bound man was tall with a well-built body, fair skin, and waist-length, spiky white hair that he usually tied back into a ponytail with two shoulder-length bangs framing his face. There were red lines under his eyes that extended down his face going all the way to the bottom along ith wrinkles that he had around the corners of his mouth and a wart on the left side of his nose. His attire consisted of a green short shirt, kimono and matching pants under which he wore mesh armor visible at his wrists and ankles. And he also wore handguards, a black belt, traditional Japanese wooden sandals, and a red hari with two yellow circles on each side. He had a large scroll on his back and wore a horned hit 8 with the kanji for oil. Yuhiran looked down at the bound man as he looked up at the Hokage. Hey sensei, you called for me? The determined man asked as Naruto looked down at the man and dubiously activated his Renegan. Jiraiya, I have called you here to teach your godson for the finals of the Chunin selection exams alongside Tiger, Hai said as Jiraiya looked up to Na and his mouth fell open once he saw Naruto's eyes. Yes, Na is the Renegan, Hisan told his student. Jiraiya looked over to the Ambu before looking back at his sensei. I could teach the kid myself and give him the toad contract. Jiraiya said as Naruto looked at him. I have the dragons, bears, wolves, and foxes. I don't have another contract, Naruto said as he looked at the man with contempt. I'm agreeing to be taught by you as Hokage-sama has assigned me. But no, I want nothing to do with you, grandfather. Naruto spat at him. Jiraiya looked shocked by what Naruto said. You know, Jiraiya asked him. That you, my father's father? Yes, Naruto said as Hirozen's eyes shot wide as he looked at Na. Jiraiya is your grandfather? He asked Na who nodded. Who is your grandmother? He wondered as Na looked over. Like my mother but a different pantheon. Naruto said as Hirozen looked amazed. She is from the land where we get our writing from. Na added. So she is a goddess as well? Tiger asked as Jiraiya looked shocked this time. What are her domains? Tiger asked him. Her domains are over the rising sun, the royal family of the country that I belong to and of creation, Naruto explained. Jiraiya looked shocked before he gained a smile that he managed to woo a goddess. Amaterasu Oba is also the queen and ruler of the Shinto gods, Naruto added as Hirozen nodded. So then, Jiraiya, here are your orders. Train him and help him gain the strength he needs to beat the QB. Hai said as Jiraiya looked confused. What do you mean? Jiraiya asked him. I did not agree to do this, he added. Hai narrowed his eyes at his student. Let me tell you something that Naruto's mother told me a few days ago. Hai said as he walked around his desk so that he was in front of his student. She was going to tell her twin brother, the god of medicine and health, to make sure that all our doctors would not be able to save anyone but a select few. Hai said as Na turned away as Tiger looked at him. What is it? He asked Naruto. Mom knows about my time in Konoha, and she asked me about the hospital staff, and it took Amaterasu Oba to stop her from killing every doctor and nurse in the hospital, Naruto said as her inside. Do you see what has happened, Jiraiya? The Hokage said as he looked down at his student who was getting up off the floor. Yes, Jiraiya said with a nod. Good. I'm going to inform the council of this and pray that they do not do anything to anger two goddesses. Hai said as he looked at his student who nodded. Jiraiya looked at Tiger and Naruto, then nodded. All right then, let's head off, he told them as they walked out. Enonoi watched them leave before turning to his leader. Kusha was a goddess all along, he asked. Hai nodded as he looked over to the man. From what Naruto told me, she was being punished for what one of her maidens did and angered her father, the king of her pantheon and the three fates, Harrison said as Inoiki nodded. So, I'll head off to the council room and wait to see if I can gather what brains I have left from the information that I gained, Enonoi said as he started to walk out, but stopped by the door. Sasaki Uchiha betrayed us as he is not really loyal, Inoiki said before walking out. Hai stayed quiet for a little while before he turned to a seat. Being out like this is not like you, old friend, Hai said as one of the Konoha elders appeared in the seat. I wanted to make sure that you got all the information from Haki, he said as the Hokage took a puff of his pipe. Hirozen, we both know that if the gods are watching us, then we need to move carefully more so than we have been. He told Hirozen. Yes, but who was the one that told the civilian that Naruto was Argenturi? Hai asked as he looked at the man. I did so that the insects would know that we had a plan in hand. But Kaharu being who she was made the boy an easy target. He said as Hirozen took a puff. I will not lie to you and say that I did as you said and disbanded Root, but now seeing what has happened I have a plan, he said as Hirozen looked at him. And what is that, Danzo? He asked him. Orochimaru has asked for my help taking you out and killing you with his ninja. Danzo said as Hirozen nodded. I see. So you thinking of helping him? He asked as Danzo nodded. And what? Hai said as Danzo looked down at his arm. I have done some things that I regret, but I will aid Konoha and you. Danzo said as he looked up with a fire that Hirozen had not seen in a long time. And when the time comes, I will aid you in the fight against Orochimaru. Danzo told Hirozen, who chuckled. I see, the Hokage said as he started to stand up along with Danzo. Shall we inform the idiots what has been going on? Hai said as Danzo nodded as both men walked out of the office. Training Ground 0. Jiraiya, Tiger, and Naruto walked into a large training ground with a waterfall leading into a lake and a large forest along with valley spikes. As the two men and Naruto looked around, Jiraiya turned to Tiger. So, are we going to be teaching him how to access the QB's chakra? He asked the Anbu, but Tiger shook his head. There is no need, as Naruto-san's summons had him complete the first stage of that by beating his inner darkness, Tiger told the man before forming the tiger seal as wooden pillars with food dog heads shot out of the ground as Tiger sat on the ground and gained the symbol of sit on his hand. Zhao, and he needs the key, Jiraiya said as he bit his thumb, went through the seals, and slammed the ground, summoning something. After the standard smoke cloud was a black and orange toad with dark markings around its eyes and mouth and a circular mark just below its mouth, and it looked like it was wearing an obi. The toad looked around before looking at Jiraiya and then at Naruto, then turned back to the Hoage student. Jiraiya, what is going on here? It asked Jiraiya and it sounded male. Jero, he needs the key. Jiraiya said to the now named Jera. What? Why? Jero asked him shocked. It seems that the kid is ready to fight the fox for its chakra. Jiraiya said as Goethe looked over to Naruto with narrowed eyes before his body expanded into a scroll. As the scroll body opened, showing a fine jutsu formula over the scroll portion of his body. Na looked at it before seeing a square. Na then started to float up to the square and placed his hand in the square. And then the Fujin Jutsu formula started to move across the scroll and onto Naruto's arm until the scroll part of Jero was empty of the Fu and Jutsu formula. Well, it seems my job is done, Jero said as the scroll rolled up and he returned home. Jiraiya turned to Na, who had floated back down to the ground, bit his thumb, and slammed his hand on the ground. Kuchio's sumu kitsune. Naruto called out two pure white Ferocian foxes with ink brush-like tails with black on the end that seemed to be dripping with some ink. Yoko Aiko, I need a septogram seal with a 7-input overlay that allows training on the out and in. Naruto told the foxes, who nodded and started to run around the area around him. Naruto sat down, crossed his legs, and closed his eyes as the foxes zoomed past him. Flames formed atop the wooden towers as Jera looked at Tiger. What's happening? He asked the Ambu. He's now in his mind. Tiger told him. Naruto's inner world. Naruto opened his eyes as he stood in a sewer with water up to his ankles and started walking to a place he had only been to once. He walked up to a pair of enormous gates that are up the entirety of the back wall. And behind the gates, a pair of red eyes opened. So, my jailer has come to visit. It said as I moved up to the gates. When it was by the light, it showed that it was a red-orange cold kitsune with black fur around its red eyes that stretched up to its ears and 9 long swiping tails. It also had the upper body structure of a human, complete with opposable thumbs on its clawed hands. It was the QB. The QB looked at Na before narrowing its eyes at him. Where is the real you? It asked Na. The real me? Na asked as he started to float up to the gates. You looking at him? Naruto said as he took hold of the paper on the gates. He then tore it off as the QB stood up and Naruto let the koso flow around his waist, showing his camp shirt, which had the words Camp Half-Blood in black lettering with a Pegasus in the middle of his shirt. He then pulled up his shirt to show his seal and held out a hand as the Fujutsu formula he gained from Jero formed on the arm. So, you're going to try to take my chakra from me? The QB asked him. The demigod locked eyes with the kitsune. I would like for us to work together as one, but I have a feeling that I must show you my strength and resolve to do so, Naruto said as it laughed. Then shall we test your mettle? The QB said to him as Na slammed his hand that held the Fu and Jutsu formula onto the seal. Na moved away from the gate as the QB forced open the gates with its claw. Na landed on the ground. As both of them locked eyes once more, the QBI gathered chakra into its mouth, forming a ball of chakra in front of its mouth, and Na jumped at it with his heel in the air before he brought it down on the fox's head. The floor beneath the fox cracked as it swung one of its tails and hit Na, who took hold of something light orange before jumping back and pulling something out that looked like a ghostly image of the fox. Na then holds his left arm straight out in front with his palm facing the fox as his arm rotates inward and his wrist opens like a door hinge. The hole in his left hand opens up to reveal a gun sight that Na can aim at the QB with it and shoot a giant ball of iron at it. The fox batted it away with one of its tails as Na started to shoot small mortar shells out of the cannon part of his arm that exploded into the face of the QB. It raised one of its claws, swiped and slashed out at the air, sending a hurricane at Naruto. Kimono Kenruhiko Taka, Na called out as he slashed at the air with Yodo with an arcing blade of wind that cut through the hurricane and cut into the fox who roared. So, it seems that we're done with our warm-up, the fox said as it gathered chakra in his mouth and shot a beam at Naruto. Dodon Doruhi Na called out as a wall rose out of the ground with heads of various animals that met with the beam. Na kept the snake seal as he constantly removed the wall from the beam that the QB sent at him. Once the beam was over, Na formed the bird seal as the rock wall turned into a spike that shot forward into the fox's shoulder. Why don't you use your chains? The QB asked Naruto, who looked back. I know that I'll win easily with them and I'm supposed to train for 2.5 months with the seal that I have asked Yoko and Aiko to make and it is the one that my outer body is within and the fighting between us translates to my outer body's training. Naruto told it as the fox smiled down at Na and it was a savage smile full of teeth. So in the name of the sage, I will not use the chains against you and I will win. He told it as the smile turned from savage to sincere and it started to laugh with deep laughter before T looked back down at Na spoken like a true Azuzuaki. The QB told Na who looked up at the fox. Now back up those words it said as it swung one of its tails at Na. Shinra Tensai Na called out as he ended with a blast of force that pushed the tail away from him. Dodon Yomi Numa. Na called out after he went through 2 hand seals and then beneath the fox was then sunk into the ground deep. Na then shot his hand as a ghostly hand, gripped it, pulled out and started to pull back. Did you really think it would be that easy? The QB asked Na as it started to glow red and red chakra shot out at Na. Na then let it go. I had hoped. Nord told it as the fox smiled at Na, who summoned a horde of clones. Na then nodded as the clones started to run at the QB, each of them taking a handful of the chakra and then beginning to pull. So going for the army tactic, the QB asked the clones as it started to pull itself out of the mud that it was stuck in. Still Na was above the fox once more with his heel aimed at the fox's head once more, forcing it back into the mud. Trying that once more, the fox asked Naruto as it swung its tail at Naruto. But this time, Naruto sent the tail away from him with another Shinra Tensai and then slammed his fist into Ye Fox's head, dazzing it. The clones started to pull chakra out of the fox, but one of the tails slammed onto a small portion of the dispersing them. Na narrowed his eyes at the tails and summoned more clones who jumped off the head, each going through the same hand. Seals and arms of rock shot out of the ground and held the tails down. As the QB tried to move its tails, each of the clones kept the tiger seals, ensuring that the fox did not break out of the binds they had put it in. Pull now while you can. The real Na yelled out to the clones, who did as they were told. The fox looked up at Na with its red eyes, meeting Na. It seems that you came here with a plan. It told Na and did not try to move. Yes, I knew that I would need to restrict your movements. So, I trapped you in the swamp and then stopped you from attacking me with your tails by binding them down. Naro told it as he looked down. The Na clones started pulling the chakra out of the fox, and the QB gained a gentle smile. It seems that you have come in here with a good plan, the fox said, and it could not move its tails as the rocks were binding its tails and it could not twitch them. Its arms, legs, and belly were stuck in mud that was hard to escape. But you have not won this yet, it told Na as something started to form out of Naruto's shadow. Na turned to see that it was a girl around his age with pale skin, long black hair flowing behind her, and red eyes. She had a well-endowed chest and did not have a hint of clothing on her, but ornate black markings covered her body. Yuna said as the girl nodded. Yes, master, she said as her sword form appeared in her hand and got into an attack stance. And a sword appeared next to Na. I am aiding the fox here, but as your weapon, I cannot let you go into battle without something. Yodo told Na as Nordo took the sword and nodded. Yodo sped away and disappeared from Naruto's view before Yodo appeared above Na with wind swirling around her sword. Kimono Kenru Hachidor Kazaha, Yodo called out as she slashed at the air, sending a high-speed wind blade at Na. Naruto gathered a cyclone around him as he jumped at Yodo and spun in the air, forming a hurricane and sending out blades of wind from the hurricane. Yodo's sword burst into flames that were sucking in all of the wind that Naruto generated. Kimono Kenru Hai Jutsu, Debingahu, she called out as she slashed at Naruto with an overhead slash with her burning blade. Na sent a blast of air from his feet to push him away from Yodo's sword, but the tip cut through Naruto's skin and went from his right shoulder to his left hip. Training Ground Zero. As Naruto sat in the middle of a large seal with Tiger, Jiraiya and the two foxes that Naruto summoned watched before He foxes sniffed at the air. It seems that we did a good job with the seal, one of them said as Jiraiya turned to the fox with a raised brow. What do you mean? He asked them. The fox turned to the older human. The slight smell of blood in the air. And with having him ask us to make so that his training and the fighting that he goes through in him added up to real life training, they told him before they returned to the summoning realm. Why would he want that type of seal? Tiger asked as he looked at the blonde going crimson. Think about it, Jiraiya said as Tiger turned to him. Who better to train with than a Jew? Jiraiya said as Tiger looked shocked before nodding. Excuse me, someone said as both Jiraiya and Tiger turned to see Kakashi standing behind them with Sasaki. Is it all right if we train here? Kakashi asked them. Jiraiya looked over to Tiger and once he heard a hand twitch, he looked back over to Kakashi. No, this is the cage personal training ground that we have been given access to thanks to Sensei. Jiraiya told Kakashi. Now, there is no need for that as they are both on the same team, Kakashi said but felt a kanai at his throat. He turned to see Jiraiya holding the kanai. Let me rephrase what I said, Jiraiya said as he looked Kakashi in the eye. This training ground is for those of the Hokage and those that the Hokage allow to use it. So leave before I kill you and the Uchiha for trespassing on this training ground. Jiraiya said as Kakashi could tell that Jiraiya was not kidding and nodded. Jiraiya pulled his kana away from Kakashi's throat as Kakashi started to walk away. Naruto's inner W. Na and Yodo had their blades locked together, and both had an element covering their swords as they stood on the head of the QB. Naruto's sword was covered in water, while Yodo's was covered in flames. The clones were making good ground. Seeing that neither of the blades would move, Na moved out of the stalemate and slashed at Yodo's wrists, cutting them and almost dropping her sword form. Na then started charging at Yodo with his sword thrusted forward, but Yodo blocked the strike, but she lost her sword as Na took hold of the blade. Na then spun the blades around until the tips of both swords were pointed to the left as the aura of a saber-toothed cat formed behind him. Kimono Kenryak and Hanako Nagiri. Naro called out as he sent out 2 chakra slashes that sent Yodo flying off the QB. Na jumped after her and moved both blades behind his back as he looked at Yodo. Kimono Kenru Hyena Hoko Naruto called out as he brought down both swords on Yodo, and once both blades hit the sword spirit, a loud shock K-wave from and shot Yodo into the ground. Na kicked at the air, allowing him to go further into the air above the QB. With his arms out and both swords pointed to the ground, Naruto's swords then burst into flames before he started to fall in the direction of the QB. The blades grew, slashed both his swords and then cut at the QB, sending out a shock wave of flames. The QB pulled its head back as the clones finished pulling the chakra out of and all the clones started to disperse. The chakra then started to be pulled into Naruto. Na gets covered in a golden chakra that flickers like flames. He gained 2 horns on his head, 6 Magatama markings around his neck, a swirl design over his stomach that was like the seal that was on his stomach, and various other lines extending along their body. Naruto looked at his body as the band that held the tails in place crumbled as the clones controlling it were gone. Na looked at the fox and found it looked like it was malunited and was just bone. Are you? Na asked as it looked at Na with fresh eyes. As to the fox's eyes, it did not see Na. No. It saw its father. The QB got up slowly, and since Na stopped sending chakra to the mud that was pulling it in, it pulled itself out of the swap. I'll be fine. Finish the seal, it told Na. Na nodded as he placed a hand on his seal before turning it. As his inner world changed, the ceiling of the sewer grew out and the light in there became brighter as the stone started turning into a blue sky. The water beneath the 3 within Naruto's soul started to rush towards the gigantic fox, and lush green grass grew, making a large grass field under a clear blue sky with a bright sun shining. The water formed a moat around the cub. As torii gates fell from the sky around the island that the fox was on, and 4 more gates fell behind Na, which held a giant orb of chakra that was from the QB, both Na and the fox kept eye contact as this was happening before the QB laid its head down. It will take a few days before I can teach you how to use my chakra. So, tell the woodman and the toad man that I will aid you in that training in 2 days, and they can handle the rest, it told Na, who looked shocked. You're willing to help me? Na asked it. The fox turned its gaze to the sky. If father has said you are the one, then I shall place my bets on you as well and aid you where I can. The QB told Na, who nodded. Master, Yodo called out as he turned to her. You did well fighting me. And with that, you have unlocked the first stage of me, she told Na, who nodded but looked confused. What do you mean the first stage? Naro asked her. I devour the swords of those that I defeat so I can take many forms. Yodo told him as Naruto nodded. And I can call a second blade for you to use, she added. Na nodded. I understand, he said before turning to the fox. Before I leave, can I ask what your name is? Na asked the fox, who smiled down at Na. Kurama, it answered as Na vanished from his inner world. Training Ground Zero. Naruto opened his eyes as he felt the chakra exhaustion and the cut that his sword gave him. And so he fell back. I'm exhausted, Na said as Jiraiya approached him. Well, from what I would get from the seal, you got what you wanted, he told Na. So, how did it go? He asked the Uzumaki. I now have access to Kurama's chakra, Naruto said as he did not sit up. Kuramama? Tiger asked as he walked over. All the Buju have names and the CBs as Kurama, Naruto said as he slowly started to sit up. And I must have used all of my chakra in making sure that I got its chakra, Na said as Jiraiya nodded. That makes sense. As you were fighting Aiju, the sage said as he helped Naru to his feet. So, are we going to train you to use its chakra? The sage asked him, but Na shook his head. Kurama said that thee'll be alright in a few days, and then thee'll train me so you too can handle the other part. Of training. Naruto said as both nodded. So what are you going to do? Naruto asked Jiraiya. Jiraiya turned to Tiger and nodded as the Anbu when thou hand seals before calling out. Dodon Doru Joki. A large part of the earth beneath Tiger started to rise up in the air, making a large cliff face. Sweden Takatubo no Jutsu. Tiger then called out as the cliff face turned into a waterfall. Tiger informed me of your taijutsu. And from what I could understand from it, you need full body training. Jiraiya told Na, who nodded. So, well, start with arm and upper body training, as I want you to climb this cliff face and I want you to do it within 3 minutes. Jiraiya told Na, who nodded as he walked over to the wall. Training Ground 5. Kat and Sakura stood on an empty training ground as Kat was going through Kata and had Sakura follow her again. Kat said as she walked over and slightly corrected Sakura's footing. Yes, Kat-sensei, Sakura said, going through the movements again. Kat watched Sakura and smiled behind her mask before another Anbu appeared next to her. And this one was wearing a panda mask. Panda, sorry to ask you to do this on such short notice, Kat said as she turned to her fellow female Anbu. It's all right, Kat. Panda said as she looked at Sakura, who was going through Kata. So, what am I teaching her? She asked Kat. Medical Enjutsu, and if we have time, probably Haki and Rokuiki. Kat said as Panda nodded as she looked at Sakura. What does she know? Panda asked Kat. Hardly anything, but she has somehow managed to pick up chakra enhanced strength. Mujin Misai and made her own jutsu. Kat said as Panda nodded. So, the rumor is true that Kakashi robbed the ball of his students. Panda said as Kat nodded. More like royally up. Kat said as she shook her head. He wanted to make sure that Yandai-sama's son was looked after. But as soon as the Uchiha clan was brought to the edge, he changed gears and started to help the Uchiha. Kat added as Panda nodded sadly. Border of land of earth and land of fire. Kakashi was standing on a large pillar of rock as he watched over Sasake as lightning started to gather in his hand. Hokage-sama will forgive me when Sasake wins the exams, Kakashi thought as he looked at Sasake. Keep him strong. Train him. Make the Uchiha strong once more. Kakashi heard as he watched Sasake. Later in the day, Konohana was walking down the road to the Phoenix Bar where Hana Inuzuka was waiting for him as she sat in a seat on the outside waiting for him. Kuno was lying on Naruto's shoulder as she looked at the 3 hounds near Hana. Hana looked over and saw him approach her as he sat across from her. Thank you for seeing me, she said. My training for the day was over, and you wanted to talk. Naruto told her as Hana nodded. Yes, I wanted to talk about what I did or did not do, Hana told him as Naruto looked at her with a raised brow. I know that if I apologize, it will not make up for the last 12 years, Hana said as Na nodded. There was a reason why I did nothing, and it's not even a good reason, Hana said. And that is? Na asked her. Hana said nothing but looked down as 2 drinks arrived for them before Hana looked back up at Na. I was afraid, she told him. Of me, he asked her, but she shook her head. Then what were you afraid of? Na asked her. I was told if I were to look after you, I would be banished from the Inuzuka clan by one of the elders. Hana told him as Na narrowed his eyes. And while sensei would have accepted that I could not do that, and I soon started to hate you for the fact that you were alive while she was not. Hana told him. Naruto said nothing as he just listened to her. Over the years my hate grew and grew. I joined in on the fox hunts that would go after, and while I did not hurt you, I led them to you. Hana said as tears started to fall from her eyes. A part of me was dying each time I would join a fox hunt. Hana told him. Na listened to her and said nothing as the hounds at Hana's feet looked at her. What changed? Na asked her. It was the day that sensei showed up in the compound. Hana said as Naruto nodded. It then dropped like a ton of bricks. I failed not only my sensei but my godmother. Hana said as Na sighed. Naruto picked up his drink and took a sip of his drink. So where are we going to go from here? Naruto asked her. Hana looked up at him. Mom told me that you made a vow on the river Styx. He said as Hana nodded. Do you know the vow that I made? Hana asked him as Naruto nodded. Then what are you going to do? she asked the Uzumaki. Na looked over to the Hokage mountain that had the faces of the previous cage of Konoha before he settled on the last face on the rock face. Sakura and I have talked about this, and we found out when word gets to the council about me being my mother's son, I will be placed under CRA, but the number that is given to me will have a limit put on it. Naruto told her as Hana nodded, as she already knew this, and while I do not like it as I am with Sakura, I believe that you deserve a second chance. So I believe that we can get to know each other. Na said as Hana smiled, but Na held up 3 fingers. But they will also do that because of the Renegon. Na thought. But it must be on 3 conditions, he told her as she nodded. Anything, she told him. The first is, I would like for you to give me the names of everyone who joined you during the fox hunts. The second would be an aid in training with a ninja animal, and the third is something that can help Sakura with her training, Naruto said as Hana looked surprised by Hi's conditions, but nodded. I get the list of names, and I can join your training next week if that's right. Hana asked Na, who nodded. As for helping your girlfriend, I may have to ask Karina if she can see if she can aid in her training, as it would make up for not being there for you as I am Ma. Inly a taijutsu just in my clan. Hana told him that's fair, Na said before he looked across the road to see the Ikebus Jinchuriki walking down the street. Hana saw who he was looking at. Why is he like that and not like you? She asked him as Naruto turned to her. From what Kurama, my buju's name, told me is that it's a mixture of Shitsuna sealing and the Ikibi itself, Naruto told her. Hana looked confused. Why are they sealing? She asked him. The seal that they use is the same seal for each Jinchuriki. And it does the same thing each time, Naruto told her as Hana nodded. Only hold the beiju, nothing else, Naruto said as Hana looked even more confused. Isn't that what a seal is supposed to do? She asked him. Yes and no, Naruto said as he looked at her. You see, the seal that is placed on a Jinchuri needs to do 4 things. The first is to seal the beiju. The second is to allow the Jinchuriki to access the beijus ability. The third is to allow the beijus chakra to integrate with the chakra of the Jinchuriki fully. And finally, it is to stop the buju's influence. Na explained to her. And Sununa's, don't do all that, she asked him. No, at best it can only do 2 of those things, Naruto said as they returned to their drinks. The next day, training ground 5, Kat and Panda watched Sakura go through a series of taijutsu stances, and Kat nodded. She's doing well, Panda said as she saw that Kat was holding something behind her. What's that? She asked. If she is going to be with Na, I'm going to teach her kenjutsu, Kat said as Panda looked shocked. What sword are you giving her? Panda said as Kat placed the item she held onto the ground. Panda saw she was holding a wooden box before she looked up to her pink-haired student. Sakura, Kat called out as Sakura stopped her taijutsu stances. I have a gift for you, Kat said as Sakura walked over to Kat. What is it, Kat-sensei? Sakura asked her as the Andrew opened the box to show 2 swords. Sakura, here are 2 swords that have been passed down from my sensei to me, and I would like to pass them down to you, Kat said as he held up the first sword. This is Tenju, Kat said as she passed the sword over to Sakura. Tenju was a standard katana with a silver blade with a blue wave-like pattern, and the crossword was an abstract shape with 8 points with an overlapping design. Each plate had a navy blue core with a silver border. The sword's hilt is wrapped in a white cloth with a short length of white chain with a broken link. Sakura took Tenju into her hand. Do some test swings, Panda told her as Sakura nodded. She went through some swings before she slashed at the ground and a blade of water shot out and cut into the ground. Tenju was a blade that was forged with water release chakra throughout the forging process. Kat said as she handed Sakura the other sword. This blade is Maju, she told Sakura. Maju, like Tenju, was a standard katana, but this one had a black blade with a red flamel-like pattern, and the crossword was an abstract shape with 8 points with an overlapping design. Each plate had a crimson-red core with a black border. The sword's hilt is wrapped in a black cloth with a short length of black chain with a broken link. Is it like Tenju? Sakura asked Kat. As the Ambu nodded. Yes, but instead of water release chakra, it is made with fire release chakra. Kat told her as Sakura and nodded. I'm going to teach the kenjutsu style that my sensei had taught me, and you can pass on to the ones that you can teach one day. Kat told her. Well, start with Tenju. Kat said as she drew her sword faced away from Sakura and held her sword above her head. Sakura also held her sword above her head and then both brought the blades down to the left and up to the front of them before going to the right. Again, Kat said as they went through the stances again. Panda walked over and corrected Sakura's stance and Sakura started to move through the stances. Good. You have managed to get him down, Panda said before she drew her sword. Let's see if you can keep up with me if I make sure that I go Genin speed, Panda said as Sakura nodded. But her legs did start shaking. Training Ground Zero. Naruto was climbing the giant cliff that Tiger had made the day before with both Tiger and Jiraiya watching from below him on the ground. He's doing good, Tiger said as Jiraiya nodded his head. That he is, the sage said as he looked up at the Uzumaki. The next round he's going to have his left arm bound, Jiraiya said as Tiger nodded. The crunching of grass drew both men as they turned to find Hana and soon walking over with their hoon. DS. So where is the kid? Sun said as the sage pointed up. Both Inuzuka looked up and they saw him climbing up the cliffside. Ah. The Gake no Bori. No. Gyo. Some said as Hana looked shocked by what she was looking at. Not even I can do that, Hana said as she looked up at Some looked at her. And why not? She asked her daughter. Kush Artemis sensei never got round to teaching me how to do it. Hana told her mother as Soon nodded. That is fair, she said before looking at her oldest child. Get your up there, Some told her, but Hana said, but Soon narrowed her eyes at her child before Hana sulked as she walked over to the cliff face. You have to send chakra to a part of your body like with the Kanori no and Swirl no Jutsu but your fingertips instead of your feet. Jiraiya explained to the team as Hana nodded. The hound walked over to try and join their partner but soon stopped them. Hana has to do this by herself, she told the hounds as they nodded. Hana started to climb up to the cliff face as Naruto was making his way down. You come here often? Hana asked him as Naruto looked shocked, but he also lost concentration and slipped and fell into the small lake of water before. Them. Na popped his head out of the water as Jiraiya looked at him. Get your back up there, Geki. The sage told him as Na nodded and started to climb back up the cliff face. So, what are you teaching the kid? Some asked the two of them. The fox. Tiger started. Kurama. Na yelled down. Kurama is going to teach Naruto how to use its chakra. Tiger said as Soon nodded. I'm going to show the kid how to fight alongside his summons while Tiger here is going to teach him how to use wood release. Jiraiya told Some as the woman nodded. That makes sense, the woman said before she looked at him. So then I'll teach him how to fight alongside his ninja animal. Sunam said as she looked at the small fox looking up at Na. Soon's hound walked over to Kuno. So what can you do? The hound asked the fox. I can use Kitsun no Hai that the dragons taught me how to use it, she told the older four-legged animal. Kuromaru soon asked her hound as the Ninken turned to her. She knows something called Kitsun no Hai. Kuromaru told as the woman nodded. She then turned to look at both Naruto and Hana to find that Naruto was almost down as Hana was breathing hard. That girl soon huffed. If Artemis Sama were here, she would whip Dog Girl into shape. Kuno said as she looked up. True, Kuromaru said as Soon looked at her hound and raised a brow at him. The vixen said that if Artemis Sama were here, she would whip Hana into shape. He said as Soon nodded. You're right, the woman said as Jiraiya walked over to Na. Now that you've gotten to this point, it's time to strap an arm behind your back, he told his student as he pulled out a rope and then looked at Na. Your right hand is your dominant arm. Right, he asked as Na thought for a second. They're both my dominant arms as I'm ambidextrous. Na said as Jiraiya nodded slightly, wincing. Then this is going to be difficult, the sage muttered before looking at Naruto's arms. All right, then, which arm do you use the least? He asked Naruto as the Uzumaki held out his left arm. All right, then well tie your right arm so that your left arm will gain muscle that is on par with your right, Jiraiya said as the sage tied Naruto's right arm behind his back. Now do another 100, and each time you fall, that's another 10, he told his student before a splash was heard next to them as they turned to see Hana popping her head out of the water. That goes for you, too, Hana soon called out as Hana rolled her eyes at her mother. The next day, Naruto sat in front of Some with Kuno on his shoulder and their eyes were closed. Focus on each other, Sunam said as she looked at both Fox and Boy, felt the connection to each other. Let it sink in, she told him as the wind blew in Naruto's hair and Kuno's fur. Na breathed in and then breathed out. Kuno then breathed in and breathed out. You need to be as one mind, but you share two bodies, Sunam told them. Na breathed in and then breathed out. Kuno then breathed in and breathed out. And then as one they both breathed in and then out. Good, you are on the same level as each other. Some said as both boy and fox were breathing in sync. They both then opened their eyes to show that Naro had slit pupils and Kuno had slit pupils as well as they looked at some. Now then, let's see if you can fight as one, she said as Na stood up. The next day, so this is the QB's chakra, Sunam said as she looked at Naruto, who was covered in golden, yellow, orange-like flames with 2 horns of chakra along with 6 black Magatama markings around his neck. A black swirl design over his stomach that was like the seal that was on his stomach. So, from what I can get, you need to let your body get accustomed to using Kurama's chakra, Tiger said as he felt stronger being close to Naruto like he was. Yeah. Kurama said that I need to be able to hold something with a tailed beast chakra arm without the object being destroyed by the chakra. Na told Tiger, who nodded. Na then closed his eyes as 2 long arms of golden yellow-orange chakra formed from his back. And Jiraiya boy, is that why you asked me to bring this statue here? A green toad with white hair styled in somewhat of a mohawk, very thick eyebrows and a small goatee, and he had a high-collared cape. Next to him was a giant stone statue of a toad meditating. Yes, Pa, Jiraiya said as the toad nodded. Na stretched their arms out as they took hold of the statue as the toad looked at the process. Ease your mind, Naruto boy, he told Na, who nodded. Fukasaku-sama, what was the matter? Hana asked as she looked down at the toad. His mind was a small bit chaotic as he was focusing on lifting the statue, the now named Fukusaku told the teenage in Isuka. They watched as Naruto lifted the statue slowly but was seemingly struggling to lift the statue. Think of it as if it is your chakra forming a Enjutsu. Fukasaku told Na, who nodded. The struggle that was on his face was gone. He is making good progress, Soon said before cracking could be heard. Everyone turned to see that the statue was gaining cracks before it exploded into dust. But this will take time, she added as Fukusaku looked troubled. Ma is going to have my head when she finds out what happened, he said as he looked at the remains of the statue, but this I can work with, he said as he stroked his goatee. Seeing the look into the toad's eye, Jiraiya could not help but ask, what are you planning, Pa? I shall return to Mount Myoboku and inform Ma about Manito's son and tell her that I am training him, and then return with another statue, Fukusaku said as Jiraiya looked shocked but nodded. So guys, what do you think about this Naruto story? Tell me your opinion in the comments. And if you want more Naruto what if stories, make sure to subscribe to Universe of Naruto. Thanks for watching. Generate thumbnail for this titles but I want new thumbnail best center thumbnail and I want new look. Thumbnail and remove video duration timing overall I want good center thumbnail, new look and fresh.